Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Becomes the Herald of God movie. Before we start, please go support Ricky1 for writing that awesome fanfic. Prologue. What does a person need to be a genius? Is it necessary for them to be well endowed in everything they do? Must be no. However, this couldn't apply to one person, Issei Haidu, but he doesn't like to be called that, so just call him Issei. The brown-haired boy was more than a genius, managing to do unbelievable things from the moment he was born. He already knew how to move and write, in addition to being able to answer tasks or activities impossible for a newborn child. Doctors were shocked when they saw the boy who already knew how to walk and write, in addition to never changing his expression, always staying neutral, unlike his other older brothers when they were born. Arthor, think of a name to give them both. Remembering that one is a man and the other is a woman. Trying to do several IQ tests to measure the boy's potential, but nothing came of it. Not even all the tests done could tell precisely how much IQ the brown had. A super genius who, despite possessing so much intelligence, unfortunately made him realize how cruel the world is and what you need to survive. The chestnut has acquired abilities to manipulate and persuade anyone. When he was just 3 years old, the boy manipulated and used several adults to his advantage and made them build a company that worked extremely well, to the point where it became a company that costs trillions of dollars. It's amazing for a child, isn't it? A person who became a trillionaire at just 3 years old? To this day, no one who works there knows the boy's true identity. They only know that he is very small, which made them attribute it to a dwarf. Only those at the top of the company, the other leaders just below Issei, were the ones who knew the chestnut. The entire international average disorganized when they saw a company grow so quickly. They've never seen someone with such management skills that they could take a company from 0 to 100 in just 1 year. But Issei never said that to his parents or anyone else. Issei's parents used the boy's intelligence to earn some money, as they were going through a financial crisis, and had a contest that gave 10 million won to the child who proved to be the most talented. Needless to say, Issei won, right? To tell you the truth, he completely humiliated his opponents with never-before-seen records in every aspect, in every subject that showed who the true genius was. With that, Issei gained worldwide fame, having a power compared to a country like the United States of America. His intelligence made him do several faculties even when he was still a child, and managed to create several inventions that would help in human evolution. As was the case with the cure against various diseases that until today could never find a way to eradicate. Thanks to that, he became a world treasure that all countries protected and everything they had. However, even though it has its good parts, it still has its bad parts. Life is not made of glory, and it was your 2 brothers who ruined your career. 2 children who, driven by envy, destroyed their brother's career. But even though his career was destroyed, Issei was still considered a world treasure who still made a lot of money. But soon after he retired, Issei never had a friend, and because of his intelligence, it was even more difficult, as the other students preferred his brother and sister, even though Issei didn't mind. Issei received several dating requests that he politely declined, unlike his chicken brother who started to be used by girls only as a means to forget about Issei, who, although Issei's brother was very beautiful, he didn't compare with Issei in beauty. What made the chestnut's younger brother extremely jealous, and with great hatred of Issei for stealing all his glory, and women, who only stayed with him because they were rejected by Issei. And that made him betray each of them, which was to be expected. But little did he know that they betrayed him too. So it was one from here and one from there. And Issei didn't even bother to try to warn him, because his brother's pride was quite big. Arthor, time jumped 7 years in this part. Issei is 11 years old and his 2 brothers are 13 years old. Issei discovered how to use magic from the age of 4, as it was in that year that he was able to awaken the powers of the divine spirits that blessed him when he was born. The divine spirits were beings with the same level of power as the Great Red, who had absolute control over their respective elements. Issei has an incredible adaptation. He mastered magic quickly and used it quickly even when he was still young, because thanks to the blessing he received from the divine spirits and the blessing, the one blessed by mana, He got practically infinite mana reserves. Issei was a natural genius who managed to master all forms of magic, from the simplest to the most advanced of each element. One day, and thanks to this person, he understood more about the supernatural world and his now conquered powers. Azazel, the leader of Grigori and 12-winged fallen angel. It was thanks to Azazel that Issei learned even more how to control his power and acquired abilities. However, Issei didn't train only with Azazel, but with all the other leaders, including Gabriel. They trained Issei in everything that was necessary, even helped him to hone his use with the power of the divine spirits. Issei's body got muscular but not overdone. In that time, Issei also created an extremely stolen ability using the power of the spirits and his own nature manipulation. He managed to create, and still hone this skill to extreme levels of power, being able to control the nature that followed his will without him doing anything about it. Being able to even transform his body into some kind of element. And in his last test, he had to fight all his masters. Obviously he struggled, but it was actually more of a one-sided defeat on the part of the fallen angels. Thanks to the power of nature manipulation in his favor, Issei is extremely monstrous to the point that no attacks that involve some sort of element work on him. Azazel was extremely happy with this. Issei was an obedient person who knew when it was time to speak and to listen, as well as being very reliable, as Azazel gave him extremely important jobs that helped him increase his combat experience. Although Azazel is pressured by his other disciple, we can say so, Albion's host, the White Dragon Emperor, to reveal his rival, as Issei was very famous for Grigori because of everything he did. Arthor, think again of a name to give Val FM. Issei quickly left Grigori to return to his house, where he stopped working and fulfilling some orders from Azazel, which of course paid very well. One day, his two brothers brought in a woman with red hair that Issei mistook for a tomato. She introduced herself as Rias Gremry, the heiress of the Gremry clan who was after Issei's older brothers. Issei's parents were confused by this but were surprised and in disbelief when she said that she was a demon and that she was after the two brothers. Clearly, this left both of them confused, but after Rias explained in detail, the parents understood and asked what sacred gear their children had. The first among Issei's brothers possesses the sacred gear, boosted gear where the Welsh dragon's soul resided. And the middle sister has a sacred gear unique in the world, even by Longinus standards. This sacred gear being the queen's crown, this crown gave the girl control over fire, ice and lightning, which were the properties of the former owner of the crown that was sealed. A Longinus capable of fighting true Longinus head-on because it is so strong. Her parents were extremely happy and Rias proudly called them into her nobility. As with the two of them, Rias would have a great chance of beating Riser and anyone else who challenged her. However, when Issei's parents asked Rias if Issei had any sacred gears, Rias coldly retorted and said that he doesn't have anything, not even mana, which was a lie, but considering how weak Rias is, it was. Of course she couldn't feel the extremely pure mana flowing from Issei. And that made Issei's parents distance themselves from him to the point where they forgot they had a child. Although Issei didn't care at all, as for him feelings like inferiority were futile. Since he was already immensely strong, he just wasn't strong enough to be crowned one of the 10 strongest existences yet. His parents started to despise him and beat him with the help of Rias and the other pieces of the Gremry heiress, as well as Issei's other brothers. When Issei arrived in high school, at the same school his brothers attended, they started spreading rumors about how perverted and this and that, denigrating the image of the boy who was innocent. Now it was not enough to be despised and hated in the case, now he was also despised at school. But again, he couldn't bring himself to care about that. As for Issei, everyone around him was just fulfilling what he had orchestrated. Everything was just part of a mere plan of his that only sought to live peacefully. Issei also went on to talk to Drake and Elsa trapped in the Queen's crown, saying that one day she would free them. Drake and Elsa laughed at this, but seeing the boy's determination they could only smile. Both Elsa and Drake knew that the boy was not trash, as everyone called them, but a true genius among geniuses. Drake, without a shadow of a doubt, would infinitely prefer to have been born in Issei than in his brother. Issei's brother was a total idiot, who didn't know how to pay attention to the environment around him and put together a better way to fight instead of risking his body and life. Therefore, Drake had to save him many times from death. And besides, the boy became quite proud and arrogant, even though he was the weakest Sekurudai in history. And the same was true for Elsa, who preferred Issei to be her bearer. The boy's potential was limitless, and even more so when she and Drake learned that Issei was blessed by mana and divine spirits. Drake went on to train Issei in hellish training, to say the least. However, Issei put up with it all and acquired even more power. It is worth mentioning that Drake taught Issei how to use his abilities: boost, duplication and transfer, penetrate and dragon aura. Although Issei is not a dragon, he was able to learn this and change his dragon aura to spiritual aura. Drake went into a deep depression when he saw Issei master all his techniques that he took years to improve in just a month. Although the Welsh dragon was a little glad to see that Issei hadn't mastered it like him, which was to be expected, as the boy had only mastered his skills for a short time while he had millennia to train. Which made Drake go into an even deeper depression, to the point of wondering if he should live or not, since his pride in being a heavenly dragon had been torn apart by a mere human. The Red Dragon Emperor could only cry and wail. Elsa started teaching Issei to improve his manipulation of the fire, lightning and ice elements, which were the elements she dominated. She told Issei about his life. Well, to say Issei was surprised would be an understatement. Which girl was shocked? Elsa was the queen of the empire that was once considered the most powerful and prosperous in the world. Someone so strong that even the biblical God himself summoned her to fight in the Great War. Someone who mastered fire, ice and lightning to the point where one of them was able to destroy continents, and then she could still rebuild with the power of ice. Someone truly monstrous who was feared even by the gods, even though she is human. Even Drake himself feared her, simply for the fact that, in a fit of rage, Elsa severely injured the original form Mao and God, which forced them to retreat. Furthermore, in the battle were Albion and Drake, who also had to retreat in fear lest they be caught in the woman's wrath. What earned its title? Queen of Destruction. Although Drake didn't admit it but said that it was a strategic retreat, I would never run away from it. It was possible to see that the lie was obvious and badly made. This made Issei and Elsa laugh at him, which made Drake cry. Issei trained with Elsa, who helped him master the three elements already mentioned, despite having already learned many things regarding the three elements. But if you compare the knowledge that Elsa, the first empress, had, say more. Well, even though it was a little lighter training compared to the training he had with Drake, it was actually more problematic, as Elsa demanded that Issei clear all useless thoughts from his head and concentrate on everything around him while meditated. It was difficult, but with a little explanation Issei was able to understand and do what Elsa asked, so his control over nature manipulation increased dramatically, making it more ridiculous than it already was. Elsa prided herself on having such control over the element of fire, ice, and lightning. Her control over the lightning was comparable to Zeus, the lord of Olympus. Her control over the fire element was comparable to Amaterasu, the Shinto sun goddess, and was even considered stronger than Amaterasu's fire. And her mastery over the ice element was comparable to Despina, ice goddess of the Greek pantheon. Well, it goes without saying that Elsa got depressed like Drake did, does it? Drake and Elsa asked Issei that when they go to the forest of familiars, he chooses a familiar that best fits him. They said that it didn't take a strong familiar to become strong, which Issei understood, as the familiar would only help you, and if that familiar's master was weak, it would obviously be refused quickly. Issei's older brother, with his ego up there, said he would defeat and make the family stronger in his, which Drake quickly refused, as the strongest familiar was none other than Tiamat, the dragon queen of karma and chaos. Drake's host was extremely annoyed by what he heard, but let it go. For, to him, Tiamat was not worthy of even breathing the same air. And that arrogant attitude made Drake sigh angrily and frustrated. Why, of all the humans in existence, did he have this pampered piece of shit who thinks he's the powerful one? Drake felt let down. His new host only had arrogance, and didn't even possess strength, and that would dishonor his title of Celestial Dragon. Well, the same thing happened with Elsa, Although Issei's sister was stronger than her brother, besides not being so arrogant and ignorant, and that allowed the queen to detail the weaknesses of the girl who accepted and listened to everything without complaining, unlike from his brother that whenever Drake tried to say he was wrong, he screamed and made a scream saying he was always right, and along with his mother and father that increased his ego more and more. Issei took advantage of the fact that no one was watching and headed towards Tiamat's cave. In the depths of the cave, a large blue dragon was sleeping, suddenly opened one of his large blue eyes, and lifting his head a little, began to sniff the air, looking at the disturber of his dream. After a few seconds, the dragon opened the other eye, showing a cold and hostile stare. Flashback. In the depths of the cave, a large blue dragon was sleeping, suddenly opened one of his large blue eyes, and lifting his head a little, began to sniff the air, looking at the disturber of his dream. After a few seconds, the dragon opened the other eye, showing a cold and hostile stare. Drag were the only words that came out of the creature. Its voice was extremely hostile and showed anger when referring to Drag, before it stood up and released a powerful blue flame that flooded the entire tunnel and left all the way incinerated. The blue dragon passed through the tunnel, not even looking at the path that was incinerated. "It's close, I can smell it," Tiamat exclaimed in her mind. "Drag, you despicable bastard, you will pay for your crimes." The hatred in her words was evident. Suddenly the dragon looked at the ceiling. Finally I have you," she said, and immediately her mouth started spewing flames. The blue dragon released its flames on the ceiling that went out, destroying everything in its path, while Issei was standing on top of Tiamat's lair. "Where is she?" thought Issei, a little doubtful. Suddenly, he felt a sensation of heat that made him quickly jump away, though he could simply nullify it because of nature manipulation. He started to think about who would have done this, but soon his doubts were gone when he saw that a huge blue dragon had come out of the hole in the ground. His annoyance and bloodlust were noticeable. Issei eyed the creature warily as he kept his guard up. "Drag, you miserable scum coward, I never thought you'd come here!" The great dragon roared as it released an icy aura that came out, freezing everything. When she was next to Issei, he just calmly watched the ice break, which surprised the dragon queen. "I'm not the drag you've been looking for," Issei spoke calmly, while still keeping his guard against the dragon. "I'm Issei," he said nonchalantly, without mentioning his last name. "You are lying," she roared to swing her tail towards Issei, who just jumped. "You smell like him, so you have to be that wretch's wielder. Take off that red glove that all wielders have and fight like a dragon," Tiamat roared before aggressively finishing. "I already told you, I'm not a bearer of drag." He paused for a moment before letting out a sigh. "My brother is the one you are looking for. He does have the drag you are looking for so much," he said, a little curious. So how do you explain to me his scent on you?" Tiamat asked, showing a bit of interest. "Are you Drag's son?" she asked with some interest, as she had never heard Drag enter into any sort of relationship with a female. "No, I was just trained by him," he said as he sat on the floor. "And the fact that you smelled him was because I brought the Welsh dragon's blood with me," he said to show a bag full of blood, which Tiamat quickly recognized. "Drag's blood?" she said, a little surprised. "How do you have it?" Tiamat asked with mild interest. Drag was trapped in boosted gear, so how was it possible for someone to have his blood? "It was when I was training with him." "I already said that, didn't I? I asked him for some of his blood and he gave it to me," Issei said while scratching his cheek. "And the reason I brought him was to attract you," Issei finished as Tiamat's eyes widened. "Attract me?" she asked, and Issei nodded in agreement. "What do you mean to attract me?" she asked, a little confused. Issei let out a slightly relieved sigh to see that the Dragon Queen was willing to talk peacefully. "Yes, I know how much you hate Drag, and what's the easiest way to attract you if not with his scent?" Issei said as Tiamat looked a little thoughtful. "So I used your hatred to draw you to me. It was pretty easy, honestly," he said as Tiamat grunted angrily. "That was pretty smart coming from a human," Tiamat spoke, expressing her annoyance at being lured into such a cheap trick. "Using my hate to lure me, but what do you want?" She got straight to the point, didn't want to stall for too long. "Honestly, what have I told you so far?" I used Drake's blood to lure you here. Issei emphasized the attract to get Tiamat's attention. I came here for you, Dragon Queen, he said quietly, and that made Tiamat squint. This human want her to become her familiar? Human, I may have talked to you, but don't confuse me, I won't be anyone's family, Tiamat said coldly, while Issei widened his eyes and quickly refuted what she said. No, Miss Dragon Queen, I'm not stupid enough to challenge you to a fight. I'm not ignorant like the ancient bearers of Drake that you probably warned them, they still set out on you, right? Issei said while Tiamat kept a confused expression. I came here to make a wish, he said, surprising Tiamat. I liked you. I respect you, you're the only one who didn't come here to fight me or want to make me your familiar. Tiamat expressed herself as Issei looked peacefully at her. But what do you want? She asked quickly. She wanted to know what the boy's order would be. I ask that you train me, Issei said to bow to Tiamat, placing her head fully on the ground, which surprised the Dragon Queen. Train you? Tiamat asked confusedly. But didn't you train with Drake? And besides, I have things for you, she said to move her claw back and forth in a gesture that told Issei to go away. Please wait a second, Miss Dragon Queen, Issei said, making Tiamat pause for a moment. I know I'm not worthy to be around you, but I ask you to train me. Lord Drake and Miss Elsa trained me, however I want to become stronger, he said, leaving Tiamat amazed. Elsa? Are you talking about the first Empress? Tiamat asked, surprised and a little astonished to hear the name of her best friend. It's been a long time since I heard his name, I thought I'd never hear it again, she said to turn her attention to Issei. But what do you mean she trains you? Is she still alive? Where is she? Tell me soon. Tiamat ordered Issei to tell her Elsa's whereabouts. Yes, she's alive, Issei said, and then saw a smile form on Tiamat's draconic face. But unfortunately, she is sealed in a sacred gear, he said to surprise Tiamat. What? Tiamat exclaimed shortly, showing great surprise and shock. And is that possible? How is she sealed in a sacred gear? She asked, feeling sad about what happened to her friend. Honestly, I'm sorry, but I don't know, Issei said to get up while scratching his head. But from the brief summary she gave me, the biblical God sealed her in a sacred gear after she lost control and started destroying everything in her path, he said, and Tiamat nodded. She remembers what her friend is called. The Queen of Destruction. So that's where that title came from, huh? Tiamat let out a sigh before looking at Issei. Very well, boy, I accept to train, but know that I will not take it easy, she told Issei's face to light up. You can leave everything to me, Tiamat-sama. I have prepared everything necessary for you, Issei said, still kneeling, while Tiamat just nodded. Thank you very much, he said, while Tiamat just had a drop of sweat coming down. Then let's go, my slave Kaham, my disciple. Now Issei started training with Tiamat too, and with the Dragon Queen he trained for 2 full years, but it wasn't in a row, and yes, Issei had to take some breaks. What made the Dragon Queen annoyed by this? There was someone wanting to steal Issei from her. How dare you steal her slave? I mean, your disciple? Who would make food for her to delight in? Who would that person be if Issei left? Just thinking about it, Tiamat started to cry as she thought she would lose her one and only disciple who taught her something important for the life of any being, the feelings. Yes, the Dragon Queen has developed a great affection for Issei. Also, Tiamat could finally understand why Issei was called a genius by Drake and Elsa. For that's what he was, a genius among geniuses. Someone who perfectly followed her tips on how to improve her 5 senses and managed to awaken her 6th sense, something she couldn't even do herself. Unfortunately, she broke down when she saw Issei get to be able to awaken her 6th sense, and she, like Drake and Elsa, went into a deep depression. Seems like all of Issei's masters were doomed to go into depression after seeing how smart he was. Tiamat also made Issei learn cooking and everything else that involves food. Obviously, Issei followed what was sent by Tiamat. She was his master, so he had to obey. And within a week, Issei was back, as he had already memorized and learned everything he read in the books he had in his course and college. And since he left the course and college faster than he entered, the professors felt relieved about it. Tiamat was a little dubious about this. She couldn't believe that he had learned cooking and all about food in just 1 week, and as expected, she broke her face again. Issei, mixed with his nature manipulation and the boy's own learning, he managed to create the divine recipe, nicknamed by Tiamat herself, who, when she ate, felt like she was ready to die, as she felt like she was going straight to paradise, so tasty. And ever since then, Issei had to keep using Tiamat as a means to improve his food, and clearly, Tiamat didn't dislike being used as a taster, as all the foods Issei made were amazing. By always trying the food made by Issei, Elsa became jealous of Tiamat, because, unfortunately, she was stuck in that sacred gear where she couldn't go out and try that food made by Issei that was devoured in an instant by Tiamat, who seemed to be delighted and enjoy it so much that it loses all politeness when it's eating. 2 years later, Issei had finally managed to reach a level of power capable of destroying continents easily. End of flashback. Issei noticed that Rias was desperate for something, but he didn't give it much value, as even if he tried to ask her, he would be despised. Issei already knew why Rias is so distressed. She was trapped in an arranged marriage with Rias. Issei had met the young phoenix years ago, and he could see the boy's distressed look. Issei asked him why he was so upset, and the young phoenix replied that it was because he was in an arranged marriage with Rias Gremory. Issei's eyes widened at the slightest when hearing that name. Before, he remembered perfectly the tomato head and the misfortune it spawned in his life. Issei thought for a second before giving Rias an idea, and he still fulfills that idea to this day. Which was that he increased his pride to the point of becoming unbearable, and along with that, he became arrogant and despised the reincarnated demons. Rias fulfilled Issei's plan perfectly, and to this day he owes Issei a favor for releasing him from his prison. Rias asked Issei what he wanted as a gift, and Issei asked him to teach him Phoenix Fire. The third son of the Phoenix clan was quite surprised, not to say the least. He knew that Issei possessed the blessings of the divine spirits, as the chestnut had spoken to him. But now asking him to use Phoenix Fire was really surprising. However, debt is debt, and Rias fulfilled what Issei wanted. It took Issei just 2 days to master and understand the Phoenix flames and use them, as thanks to the blessing of the divine fire spirit, he was able to control any type of fire. It is worth remembering that Issei was the person responsible for creating the strategies and how to fight on the part of the nobility of Rias. Issei knew Rias wouldn't listen to him, so he told this to Drake and Elsa, who told her about Issei's plan, although they both always pointed out that it was Issei who created the plan, and by assumption, for having followed the plan. Issei's ended up winning, which was a joke, as it was Rias who let himself be lost, as Issei's brother was not an opponent for Rias even with the boosted gear. While all this was happening, Issei didn't stop training, unlike his brother and sister who only relied on their sacred gear, which was a mistake, and it annoyed Drake and Elsa, who wanted their hosts to train like Issei trained to reach the level of power that is now. Now, Issei, already tired of training only his body and magic, he decided to train his control over melee weapons like spears, swords, sabers, daggers, axe, katanas, and everything else he could master. So he sought out someone famous in the supernatural world for having incredible control with the spear and swords, Scathach the immortal witch. An ancient Celtic warrior famous for having the strength of a monster. Her strength had earned her immense fear and respect from her enemies. Over the course of her life, she ended up killing so many beings, including gods, and ended up becoming immortal due to bathing in the blood of so many powerful beings. Scathach eventually ceased to be human and began to isolate herself from the world, unable to die as a human. So she was summoned by the Celtic gods, most notably Morrigan, the Celtic goddess of death and battle, to become the ruler of the Land of Shadows. With that he went on to train with the Queen of Shadows. Although it was difficult to be accepted by Scathach, who forced him to impress her. Well, obviously Issei lost, as she forced him to fight with melee weapons and not magic. Although Issei's body became extremely resilient, he was still vulnerable to weapons like the Gi Bulgaria. This body weapon of his couldn't stand it because it was immensely powerful and along with an even more monstrous wielder. However, Issei didn't die, and thanks to the Phoenix Fire he got by training with Rias, he quickly regenerated without having to spend any power or energy. He even found his defeat amusing and motivated himself even more, and begging on his knees, he was accepted by Scathach, who only accepted him after seeing the boy's talent and determination. Scathach, like any other master, has to show that he is superior? No? It is a fact, since the master would be something that the disciple has to aim to defeat. But how? Where the hell did this kid come from? Scathach herself was perplexed by what she was seeing and witnessing to the eye. Issei was showing her a mastery over the Gi Bulg spear impressive to someone who claimed to be an amateur. When she asked about Issei, the boy promptly answered all the questions. Well, she was surprised that Issei had already been trained by Elsa and Tiamat. She wasn't so impressed on the part of Drake, since for her, the Red Emperor didn't get her attention. And that made her intensify her training, which, of course, Issei followed without much difficulty. Scathach, in a gesture of appeal, forced Issei to try to master one of her spear techniques. She said that she would only show it once, and that Issei had to pay attention not to get lost. The chestnut just agreed with his master, who showed her technique with the spear and proudly asked Issei if he had seen it, and if he could repeat it. Clearly she couldn't believe that Issei had been able to copy his technique, as he had only seen it once, and besides, his speed was not something to judge. But Issei's response froze her when he said he'd seen it perfectly, and could recreate it. Scathach let out an embarrassed but shocked laugh to see Issei repeat his spear technique with the same level of power, and even explained to her some details that not even the Shadow Queen noticed. Scathach for the first time felt motivated to show his superiority, and taught him everything he could, even his most destructive and powerful sword and spear techniques. Clearly, Issei mastered everything and even pointed out the mistakes that each technique had and improved them to an even greater level, which left Scathach in awe and a little scared. Since when did a monster like this kid exist and no one knew? She trained Issei for 2 years, and in that time, Scathach trained Issei to learn to use the 18 primal runes that mastered and even evolved them, which was no longer a surprise to the god slayer. Issei also went on to read many martial arts manga where he copied various training techniques from these books. And someone who was already monstrous became even more. And as a last test before training time was up, Scathach challenged Issei to a fight and gave him, before the battle began, the Gi Bulg spear. In this battle, Issei showed the strength he acquired with training, all the techniques he got from Scathach and the manga he read, especially the manga techniques, because he managed to bring several techniques from there to the real world just by imagining. Honestly, Issei thought it would be more difficult, but it was even simple, even too simple for the amount of difficulty the protagonists put. What made Issei more indignant was the fact that the hero always won. Yeah, how was this possible? The villain has spent years training, and out of nowhere, the hero with the power of friendship, taken out of his ass, goes out there and wins. Where is this possible? For Issei, being a genius was no big deal. Even though he was a genius, Issei still trained his body and skills he possessed. With that, Scathach asked Issei to kill her, but Issei refused to kill her master, even though it was her wish, and throughout all the time they spent together, the immortal witch had to admit that her favorite disciple changed her. Issei knelt at Scathach's feet and sincerely thanked her for training him. Scathach couldn't put into words how proud she was of Issei, especially when he showed off that sword technique. An attack she herself dubbed the cut that broke the sun. Yes, Issei had shown Scathach a technique capable of cutting through the sun. Well, needless to say, they celebrated until dawn, drinking whiskey and eating all of Issei's delicious food. And as his real last test, Issei did something he honestly didn't expect to do, and that would leave a trauma in the boy's head. Issei was also responsible for Kokabil's defeat, as he was the one who created the strategy. The strategy was simple, as Rias and Sona as well as their respective nobility would have to wait until nightfall, and then they could start fighting Kokabil. This was to wait for Hakuryuku to finish her task and Azazel to tell her to go after Kokabil. As was to be expected, his brother was taking all the honor that should rightfully be Issei's, which put Drake to shame as a dragon. Stealing other people's conquests wasn't something a dragon would do, that was a disgrace to his name. Issei also went to where Sun Wukong was to ask the Monkey King to teach him about Senjutsu, Yukutsu, Tuki, Hiero and any other techniques the great sage Matching Heaven had for him to learn. Like the others, Sun Wukong took a test to see if Issei was worthy, and as the boy showed his worth, the Monkey King accepted him as a disciple. And for the novelty of Zero People, he managed to learn everything he wanted, and as a gift to his best disciple, the Monkey King told Issei to look for the pieces of the golden club that was the true form of the Rijingu Bang, the staff of the true Monkey King, the immortal Sun Wukong. The Monkey King explained to Issei everything that was necessary, and the boy was quite surprised to learn that Sun Wukong, who was considered the first Monkey King, was actually not. Following Sun Wukong's request, Issei proceeded to piece together the golden mace, and that was a very arduous and dangerous task. So troublesome, but it was worth it, as Issei himself said after having managed to put together all the pieces of the golden mace. The pieces of the golden mace rebuilt themselves until they formed a staff that took over the sky and then glowed, recognizing Issei as their new master. As it was the weapon of the first Monkey King, the immortal Sun Wukong, it was supposed to have the abilities of the former wielder, and that was true. All the techniques and skills used by the original Sun Wukong were stored in the golden mace, as well as the location of Nimbus area, the first cloud to exist. Visibly, Issei went after the air Nimbus and eventually managed to overpower the first cloud. Now he was stronger than ever. With the golden mace and the air Nimbus, he only needed two things: the Huiyan Jin Jing, or the golden flaming eyes, and eating the peaches of immortality. Arthor, it's really flaming golden eye, I checked before writing. To get the Huiyan Jin Jing, Issei would need to stay on the Lao Zi stove for 49 days and follow what the original Sun Wukong did. As for the peaches of immortality, he would only find it in the heavenly realm, which would be a little tricky to conquer. But he managed and did the same thing as the original Monkey King. He stole and ate all the peaches of immortality, thus acquiring immortality, and also something that caught his attention a lot, something called arcane power. It was different, and at the same time equal to mana, only arcane power seemed to be more powerful than mana. And thanks to him having consumed all of the immortality peaches, Issei got an infinite amount of arcane power, and obviously, he was hunted by the gods of the heavenly realm. However, unlike the original Monkey King, Issei has already used his intelligence to his advantage and manipulated his biology to become someone else and devour the immortality peaches, and, after he managed to absorb and flee, he would revert to his normal appearance. So he got everything he needed: a magic wand capable of reaching infinitely, the first cloud, the blazing golden eyes capable of looking through any illusion, and the peaches of immortality. That alone made a being capable of destroying a galaxy thanks to the Rijingu Bang, or also called the Golden Mace. Issei has become someone feared for everything he has done, although he still remains ignored. He also asked Artemis, the Greek goddess of hunting, nature and chastity, to teach him how to use the bow and arrow. Then he went after Arthoria Pendragon, a descendant of King Arthur and sister of Arthur Pendragon, who received Caliban, the ultimate holy sword. And she ended up receiving Excalibur made by the spirits, and that made her stronger than Excalibur created by God. Arthoria was a combat genius who had a high mastery over any weapon, and thanks to the teachings and memories of the ancient wielders of Excalibur created by the spirits, she managed to reach a level that was comparable, or even stronger than King Arthur. Arthoria was called the Sword Saint, because of her exceptional mastery of the sword. And she was also one of Issei's masters who taught him everything and blah blah blah. Arthor, I'll skip a while, I'll put it on the bow in your trihexa and release it by rise of him. Issei was in love with some girls, however, when he declared he received the harshest truth, even though he was already expecting something like this. Far away he found Gabriel, the strongest woman in the sky, and one of his masters too, who taught Issei mastery over light and the sacred element. Bro, you have to give me an idea of who to put in the harem, honestly. I was already thinking about Tiamat, then came another and another and another and so on. And now, what do I do, put everyone on or just Tiamat, who would be the main one? Now the time has come for the final war, rise of him and Trihexa against the supernatural world. It was quite a fight where the Securudii had his body destroyed and rebuilt from the flesh and blood of Great Red and the power of Ophis. Arthor, remembering that at that moment Issei had already talked to Great Red and Ophis. Just as he acquired some scales from both, as well as the flesh and blood of the two dragon gods. Now Issei was an unstoppable monster, while the factions and pantheons found a way to fight the Rise of Him clone that has 80% of the original body's power, and the Trihexa that only has 50%. Issei had to fight the main body of both Rise of Him and Trihexa, a hard and lasting battle. But the victory came to Issei, who defeated them both, and freed Trihexa from Rise of Him's control, and the dragon god of Apocalypse, in his last moments before being sealed away again, crowned Issei a new dragon god and gave him his power. Arthor, haha, look at me here again. Well, you must have heard that Issei had taken Drake's blood, right? Yes, he took the blood of him and all the dragons that wanted to give it to him. As was the case with Tannen, Tiamat, Drake, Albion, Great Red, Ophis, and Trihexa. And with the blood, flesh, and power of all of them, Issei managed to create a new race of dragon that I still don't know its name, I must put. However, all the glory, to no one's surprise, was given to Issei's brother, who arrogantly mocked Issei for being weak and pathetic along with everyone else. Issei just shrugged his shoulders and went on with his life in peace. Did he marry? Arthor, as I said before, I don't know who to put. I was thinking of putting only Tiamat, but after I added more characters, I don't know, you decide. But unfortunately that didn't last forever. Someone accused him of betrayal and they showed a video that, for those who knew Issei, was totally fake. However, for the other factions that believed that Issei was a traitor, they sent him to Tartarus, and there he had constant contact with the flames of hell that he began to adapt to the flames and be able to use them, and thanks to her that Issei managed to destroy the chains that chained him. At that time, he met a person who called himself God, and he explained to Issei why he was there. The reason was to pass its power to Issei, because the entity that called itself God was dying. Issei hit the power, and thus became God's herald, acquiring even more power than he already had. Issei managed to escape Tartarus, destroying everything in it. He returned to his, and so they stayed in peace for more than 5 years. Chapter 1. It's been more than 5 years since Issei escaped from Tartarus. The faction leaders did everything to look for him, especially Azazel, who considered Issei a son. But by far the most affected are Elsa, Scathach, Gabriel, Penemu, Mahima, Arthor, and Artemis, as they lost their only disciple who was accused of things he never did, besides training to become stronger. Takeda Hayato, Issei's older brother, was called a hero by everyone, just like his sister, Miyuki Hayato. Though they only fought a clone that had 80% of Rise of Him's power, and a clone of Trihexa that had 50%. No one but Azazel, Ajuka, Hades, Poseidon, Zeus, and Shiva knew that Issei was the one who truly defeated the dragon of Apocalypse and the son of the original Lucifer. For Issei was responsible for creating the seals that would trap the Trihexa again. Azazel was reassured when he learned that Issei was alive, especially when he saw how much the boy had changed between the ages of 5. Elsa, Scathach, Gabriel, Arthor, Artemis, and Penemu were very happy to see that Issei was still alive and that he had only gone into hiding so as not to be discovered and bothered by the factions in these 5 years that he disappeared. Scene change. With Issei. It's been 5 years since he went out and destroyed Tartarus. Since then he's been training to master the hell flames, and he couldn't believe how the hell that fire is so hard to control, even with the blessings of the divine spirit of fire. The hell flames seemed to have a will and did whatever they wanted, not allowing themselves to be manipulated as easily as Issei thought they would. But after 2 years, he was able to control her with better efficiency, although still not at 100%. For he had never seen such a mighty flame in all his life. Stopping trying to manipulate the hell flames for a moment, he could see that his body was badly injured and he had several first-degree burns all over his body, even on his face. Issei let out an annoyed sigh, even with his high fire resistance thanks to the divine spirit, which allowed him to take no damage over the fire element. He is now taking damage and burns that were normally not supposed to happen. This is exhausting, Issei thought, putting his hand on his head and regenerating from his burns. How the hell can this damage me and burn me? Normally that should be impossible, he said in disbelief and confused. Issei got up from the ground after gathering some mana from the environment, and regenerating his body thanks to his race of dragon that he created. He walked calmly towards a shower he had right there in his training room. Taking a shower, he looked at himself in the mirror, seeing how much he had changed. His brown hair was now white, and his brown eyes turned light blue. Someone who was already considered handsome became even more. His body was well defined and trained, and you could see some cuts and burns that didn't heal. These wounds and burns came at the beginning of your training to try to use Hell's flames. However, by a mere miscalculation, the flames lost control and went out of control, burning him drastically. He survived, but he has wounds that will never be healed, because the flames of Hell affect the soul, not only the physical body. But thanks to him being the Herald of God, he ended up being able to heal his soul, however his body couldn't heal. Leaving the training room, he walked to the kitchen. Arriving there, he found his beloved wife. His wife was a mature woman. Pretty wasn't enough to describe her. She was a little smaller than Issei, and she was wearing a white button-down shirt with a pair of jeans that hugged her legs well. The shirt was missing a button at the top, that formed a small neckline that showed a little of the full breasts, which were the largest the albino had ever seen before. And yet, her legs and butt were up to par and even better than her big breasts, as her ass molded to her tight jeans. However, what caught the albino's attention the most was the beauty that the woman exuded, which left the rest of her body short, the creamy skin that seemed to be softer than wool that perfectly matched some features. Her deep blue eyes and beautiful expression exuded an incredible serenity, and the blending of it all gave her a mystical aura. Her long light blue hair moved freely until it reached her waist. It looked silky and shiny, which added to the beauty of her body. She was none other than his beloved wife, Tiamat. And she had in her arms a little child with blue hair and light blue eyes. "Hello?" Issei's calm voice caught Tiamat's attention, and she turned to see who it was. "How beautiful my little girls are," he said in a loving tone, making Tiamat blush slightly. "She's going to be so cute when she grows up, just like her mama," Issei said to pull Tiamat and kiss her on the mouth. Tiamat was surprised for a moment, before returning the kiss with even more love. Stop it, you idiot," Tiamat said to break away from the kiss and put her hand to Issei's lips shamefully. "Don't do that in front of our little Azura, honey," she scolded Issei for kissing her in front of her beautiful daughter who was smiling beautifully. Pa, the little Azura in Tiamat's arms said something that surprised both parents. Issei's eyes filled with tears as they began to fall from his face as he took Azura from Tiamat's arms and lifted her up. "My little one said my name first," Issei shouted very happily as he shook Azura, who was laughing happily. "See that, love? She said my name first," he said to turn his attention to Tiamat, who was pouting. She was supposed to say my name first, not yours," Tiamat said, upset about being replaced by Azura. "Come on, my baby, say my name, go," she said with great hope to take the little child from Issei's hands. Issei smiled as he hugged his beautiful wife and daughter with great love. "I love you both more than anything," Issei said tenderly to gently stroke Tiamat's face with his hand. "You're everything to me, so I don't mind giving my life to save you," he said to pat his daughter's head with the other hand. Tiamat placed her empty hand over Issei's as he rubbed against it. "I love you, my love," Tiamat said with love in her calm and serene speech. "Who knew, right?" she said to get Issei's attention, who raised an eyebrow. "Love between master and disciple, how intriguing." Tiamat's voice sounded calm and loving as she reacted to her husband's touches. Tiamat kissed Issei's hand as he kissed her forehead. "You are so beautiful," Issei serenely praised Tiamat's beauty, who blushed as he said. "So beautiful it makes me wonder if I'm really worthy of you," he said calmly, although could tell he was a little depressed. Tiamat smiled a little before kissing the corner of Issei's lips. "Don't care what they say," Tiamat said, serious but calm. She was annoyed that Issei kept talking about it. "Never say that again in front of me, or rather, never say that under any circumstances. I don't like it. I love you and you love me, and that's all that matters," she said, annoyed that Issei kept thinking these things. Issei smiled and kissed Tiamat's lips tenderly as she reciprocated. "Ma," Azura's high-pitched and cheerful voice caught the attention of both parents. She said my name, honey, she did. Tiamat shouted, letting herself be carried away by joy. I love you, my Azura, as I love your father, she said, calming down a little. Issei handed little Azura to Tiamat, who was overjoyed. My little one, I hope you become my successor, Issei said with a smile, to receive a death glare from Tiamat, which made him shut up immediately. Or rather, I hope you become your mother's successor, Issei said, swallowing hard as Tiamat's gaze returned to normal. How sweet of you, honey, Tiamat said happily, putting Azura in the crib. Cute? You practically threatened me. Issei thought indignantly at what his wife had just said. Yes, she will be beautiful and graceful like you, he said with a half-hearted smile. Tiamat, seeing that her little Azura was sleeping, as it seems she caught this same mania with her father. Since he can sleep even in difficult situations and is still irritated when he is woken up. Her husband was someone who, when he fell into bed, would fall asleep quickly, and this made Tiamat angry and frustrated. And sometimes she had to wake up Issei at night so he could help her control her pheromones. For having controlled his lust for a long time, it turned out that, when Tiamat fell in love with Issei and vice versa, the Dragon Queen and his former master almost dried him up, and this left another trauma in the boy. Tiamat practically left Issei a mere dragon made of flesh and blood, just like Scathach did. The last test that left Issei the most traumatized was when he finished training with Scathach. He honestly didn't expect anyone to have so much pent-up lust. The immortal which technically raped him shamelessly, while wildly lusting after more and more without a care for the poor boy. Issei never imagined that someone who lived for over 2,000 years was so horny. Poor Issei, he trained day and afternoon, and at night he couldn't even rest. He feared that he could not survive until the end of training. Not even the training he had with Drake, Tiamat and Elsa made him so worn out. But luckily it really was luck. He was blessed by mana, and thanks to that he managed to survive. Before starting his training, Issei always absorbed mana from the environment so as not to suffer too much. The mana that flowed from the environment was natural, so it had a high regenerative content and could take away all accumulated fatigue. So thanks to that he managed to survive, in addition, evolve even more. Tiamat looked at Azura and then turned her attention to Issei, who had a carefree and serene look. Tiamat was rocking her hips seductively as her face flushed. She was wishing for a long time, but because of her daughter, she couldn't fulfill her wish. Issei swallowed hard when he saw what she was wanting. It would probably run dry again. Tiamat got close to Issei and started to run her fingers over Issei's chest, while feeling in detail his defined body that made her crazy with lust. The Dragon Queen licked her lips sensually and pressed her large breasts to Issei's chest, while with her other hand she went to his pants. Issei shivered a little as he felt her body betraying him. He looked at Azura, who was sleeping peacefully, pondering the idea of waking her up to escape what was to come. However, that would also be problematic, until your daughter sleeps again. Letting out a sigh, and seeing how his body was betraying him, Issei let himself be carried away by lust. His arms wrapped around Tiamat's waist, and she smiled lasciviously before reaching out and placing her hand on Issei's toy. Fufu, it's already warm and awake. It looks like I've made you horny, my Issei, Tiamat whispered before biting Issei's earlobe. Today you don't sleep, she whispered with even more lust in her voice, before pulling Issei's pants down with all her strength. You're going to satisfy me, aren't you? My hussy is already bet. Tiamat whispered seductively as she took Issei's hand and brought it closer to her. Lemon skipped. Azura's cry caused the two to freeze in the position they were in. Issei quickly put on his pants and ran awkwardly towards his daughter. Tiamat just muttered in frustration, as although he loved his beautiful daughter more than anything, she messed up the moment when it was getting phenomenal, as Issei had already put. The Dragon Queen was just biting her lips in disappointment that her daughter had interfered with her pleasurable moment. It had been over a week since they had had Hex, and she couldn't control her hard-on anymore. For a dragon like her, not having Hex for so long is bad. Damn it, Azura-chan, don't do this to Mom. Tiamat grumbled, depressed that her daughter had interfered with her moment of pleasure, which would be phenomenal. She started playing with her clit as she turned to masturbation, as it was the only way to at least try to relieve one little of your horny. Tiamat closed her eyes to see if she felt better, but she couldn't. Her fingers weren't enough to satisfy her no matter how hard she tried. Suddenly, she felt something wrap around her body, leaving her surprised. Opening her eyes slowly, Tiamat could see Issei holding her by the arms. "What happened?" Tiamat asked, confused. "What happened to Azura-chan?" She asked, confused and a little suspicious, as she wasn't listening to her daughter's cry. "Don't worry, I made her sleep again," Issei replied calmly as he pointed to the crib where Azura was sleeping peacefully. "Also, I put some sound seals, and it will stop her from hearing anything and also stop her from waking up," he said calmly as he licked his lips. "Now let's get back to her punishment, remembering that I will show no mercy," Issei said to Tiamat's excitement that he frantically agreed with Issei. So the hitching went on until the time Azura woke up, but that only happened the other day around noon. Tiamat finally got what she wanted, and now she was completely satisfied, no longer feeling her legs or her brain, which was lost with so much pleasure that she felt at the end of the night. Issei got up to take care of Azura quietly, not even looking like he had bucked Tiamat like crazy all night like they were dogs in heat. Tiamat's loud moans of pleasure and arousal made him more horny as his wife begged for more and more. He still remembers all the obscene words Tiamat spoke, moaning loudly. Issei picked up Azura from the crib and started playing with the little girl who was laughing softly. But it soon stopped when he saw that Azura was hungry. Issei put her in a mamoru and went to prepare the bottle for her daughter, while she was moving from side to side, not being quiet at any time. Issei came back with a bottle. Normally he would have to wait for Tiamat to wake up to give her breast milk, but until his wife woke up it would take a long time and his lazy little girl couldn't get hungry. He saw how Azura kept biting the teddy bear she got for her birthday. Issei had enough money to buy even Disney if need be. He could give any and all kinds of gifts to his daughter, but he didn't want to spoil her too much, so he only bought the necessary ones. But at least he managed to give her something, things that he can never have as a child because of his parents. He gave the bottle to Azura, who ate/drank it quickly, which took a drop of sweat from Issei. "Small body, but with a dragon stomach," Issei said to let out a laugh before picking up Azura and patting her on the back, making her burp and fall asleep. "What a lazy little girl, honestly it's all," he said with a smile. Issei put Azura back in her crib and then go prepare something for Tiamat to eat. Issei still remembers how hungry his lover could be. "Looks like Azura is going to have her mother's lion hunger," Issei thought as he felt a chill run down his back. "I'll have a lot of work when she grows up," he thought, letting out an upset sigh. Ignoring his thoughts, Issei started chopping the vegetables and putting them to pressure cooker. Issei looked at the sink and a vein appeared on her forehead. The entire sink that was normally always clean was now piled up with glasses, plates, spoons and pans. And he already knew who was the cause of it all. Yes, that's right, his wife Tiamat. Scratching his head, Issei decided to make 3 clones, one to wash, one to dry and the other to store. With that done, Issei went to finish preparing the other ingredients to make a delicious lunch for his beloved. Suddenly, he heard some footsteps coming from the stairs that descended slowly and slowly. One sounded louder than the other, seemed to be limping. Turning his attention there, he could see his wife limping down. Although she had her hands on her hips, Tiamat had a satisfied smile from the night before. Tiamat had to throw her clothes away after what she did to Issei, when he ripped his shirt and ripped his jeans off by force. Now she was wearing a white shirt that was tied in a knot below her large breasts that revealed themselves, looking like they would rip the shirt at any moment. Tiamat was also wearing short shorts that highlighted her firm, curvy ass, plump thighs and delicate legs, and creamy back. Finally you can satisfy yourself and enjoy the body and caresses of Issei, your beautiful husband. Tiamat lifted her head at the appetizing scent that aroused the hunger in her stomach that began to growl and make grotesque, flashy sounds, which made her face flush with embarrassment. She walked slowly towards Issei, who was preparing a bolognese lasagna and a pepperoni lasagna, all extremely large, each 5 feet long. Taking advantage of her husband's moment of distraction, Tiamat hugged him from behind and leaned her head on his shoulder as she looked sleepy. "How long will it take, honey? I'm hungry," Tiamat said while biting Issei's neck. "I'm still sleepy." "Hee, yesterday was a great night," she said to wrap your arms around Issei's belly. "It won't take long, just about 40 minutes," Issei calmly said to Tiamat, who had a disappointed face. "Yesterday was a magnificent night, isn't it, my perverted dragon?" he said with a smile to put his hand on Tiamat's head and rub a little gently. Tiamat smiled before letting out a frustrated sigh. "I wanted so much more, just one night isn't enough," Tiamat said, a little frustrated. "If it weren't for Azra-chan, we'd do this every day so you could give me 400 puppies," she said calmly, which startled Issei, who quickly refuted this idea. "You're dumber than I thought," Issei said with a smile to Tiamat, who let out a grunt. "The idiot here is you for laughing at your wife's dream," Tiamat said to punch Issei in the back, who just laughed, taking out a prominent vein from the Dragon Queen. "I'm not laughing at your dream," Issei said calmly, which made Tiamat raise an eyebrow in doubt. "I don't know if you know, but if you can't do it with just one, imagine with 400? Do you think we'd have the time and desire to do it?" He told Tiamat that she was thoughtful. "On second thought, that's true," Tiamat muttered, still unsatisfied. "Fufu, you haven't forgotten about my mating season, have you?" she asked Issei, which she lightly denied before picking up a spoon of some food and putting it in her mouth. "Delicious as always, honey." "Hey, don't try to deflect by giving me food," Tiamat said seriously, what made Issei almost laugh. "I'm sorry. And I know about the mating season," Issei said calmly as he looked at the oven that was baking the two lasagna. "I remember perfectly how many days you raped me just to feel satisfied," he said as he narrowed his eyes. "I don't want to go through that again. It was my worst nightmare," Issei said hesitantly as he felt a chill run down his spine. "Stop being a liar," Tiamat said to pinch Issei. "And I know you liked it, you're naughty," she whispered to give Issei a kiss on the cheek. Issei shook his head, denying what Tiamat said, before turning around and kissing her. "That's where you're wrong, honey," Issei said, and in an instant he kissed Tiamat's lips, who blushed slightly. "What was the good part? I love you more than anything, but sometimes your sexual appetite is insatiable," he said with a drop of sweat, and Tiamat was left with several marks of anger. "Runf, says the guy who, when he takes me to bed, he eats me like I'm just a simple piece of meat," Tiamat said, feigning sadness as she turned away to avoid looking at Issei. "Looking at me like that, am I your wife or just a human deposit, you idiot?" she said, slightly irritated, before feeling Issei's arms wrap around her waist. "You're being dramatic, that's right," Issei spoke, a little annoyed by what Tiamat said. "I've never seen you like that, and what's more, you're the one who makes me eat you like that. Blame yourself, not me," he said to shrug, showing disinterest. Tiamat pouted cutely before hugging Issei tightly as if he were a teddy bear. "All right, my teddy bear," Tiamat said, making Issei embarrassed with the nickname. "Era? Did you like my nickname, my love?" she said sensually, releasing pheromones that started to affect Issei. Issei was an artificial dragon, as he was not born a dragon or was draconified. Due to his intelligence, Issei managed to create a species from the union of the flesh, blood and power of the Great Red, Tannin, Tiamat, Drag, Albion, Ophis and Trihexa. So he managed to create what he called Shin Dragon, or New Dragon, or Dragon God, or True Dragon. Author: I got inspiration from Shingajira's name. The name Shin means new god or true, according to my research. It was a new breed of dragon created after many experiments by Issei. She was extremely strong, as she was made a union of the flesh, blood, and power of the Great Red, Tannin, Tiamat, Drag, Albion, Ophis, and Trihexa. And it made her ridiculously powerful. Because of that, unlike true dragons or draconified ones, Issei didn't have such a mating season, only that he could still release pheromones that similarly affected the females around him. Issei let out a sigh before placing his hand on his face. "Call me what you want. I belong to you, and because of that, you have every right to what you really want to call me," Issei said calmly, while Tiamat smiled proudly. "Well, it's almost done, honey. Just wait another 5 minutes, he said, but soon he heard the rumbling of Tiamat's stomach that startled him and made the Dragon Queen blush. That no comment or I'll kill you, do you hear? Tiamat said seriously while having a death glare directed at the cold sweating Issei. Very well, I'm your wife, it's good that you obey me, he said with a smile as he puffed out his chest in pride. Besides, you said you were going out, didn't you? Well, I hope you don't find any piranha, because if you meet and talk to her I'll castrate you and you can be sure, it will be painful. Tiamat said coldly as her teeth grew and her hands became claws that were aimed at Issei's neck, who gulped at how jealous his wife could be. Issei remembers the day his wife got jealous of him, which is not to be expected as she is so often. Issei remembers when Tiamat nearly tortured him for talking to a girl who was his fan. In addition to investing in his company and other businesses that made Issei even more money, he also started to be a model. His beauty earned him many fans around the world, and the girl was one of those fans. Tiamat had simply made a fuss just because Issei had talked to the girl. Don't worry, honey. I love you, okay? And that's all that matters, Issei said with a smile to caress Tiamat's cheek. There's no need to be jealous, okay? I'm not crazy enough to betray you, he said calmly even though his voice is scared. Tiamat smiled happily as she rubbed herself against Issei's hand as her face was flushed. That's good to hear. Because if you think about cheating on me, I won't even say, Tiamat exclaimed to kiss Issei's hand. And I really have to be jealous, you idiot Runf, that proves that I love you and also that you're mine alone, she said with a proud smile as she declared with complete confidence that Issei was hers. And I can't allow mere hitches to touch what belongs to me either, my teddy bear, Tiamat said with a big smile to approach Issei. Tiamat wrapped her arms around Issei's neck as she brought their faces closer together. They both felt each other's breath as they had a loving smile. Bwah! They stopped enjoying their moment as a couple when they heard their daughter cry. Tiamat let out a disappointed sigh again. Her daughter seemed to be doing this on purpose, was the only explanation Tiamat could come up with. It wasn't possible. Her daughter Azura only woke up or felt hungry when the situation was getting good. Don't do that again, Azura-chan. This way, Mom will be killed, Tiamat thought as she watched Issei pick up Azura and play with her. What a peaceful life, and to think that that humiliated young boy was actually a true genius, she thought as she let out a stressed sigh at how stupid someone could be to have power. Tiamat had the chance to meet the current Sekiryutai, Takeda Hayato, and the Queen's Crown host, Miyuki Hayato, who were quite weak compared to Issei, who doesn't have any sacred gear. However, what set Issei apart from them was that his former student and now husband was not arrogant and stupid, who believed he was superior to everything and everyone just for having a sacred gear that, where not even you are chosen, and yes, it is received by luck. A mere coincidence of the fate that favored them, nothing more, nothing less. The Dragon Queen had the chance to talk to Miyuki and was quite surprised by the girl. She wasn't like Issei always said, she was very different. Maybe some kind of fax to hide her true face? Or was it her genuine face? Tiamat couldn't understand, but she could see, as an ancient dragon who has millennia of experience in which Miyuki, her husband's older sister, was deeply regretful. Chaos Karma Dragon was surprised by Miyuki, honestly. She wasn't expecting the girl to miss Issei so much and speak so melancholy. She can hear the sadness, anguish, suffering and despair in the brown-haired girl's voice, and from what she heard from her friend Elsa, Miyuki cried a lot at nights remembering everything she did to Issei, that she didn't have nothing to do with your feudal envy. Speaking of a friend, Elsa was quite surprised when Tiamat told her that she was married to Issei, someone the first empress hadn't heard from in a long time. Joyfully Elsa asked about Issei and how much he had changed at the age of 5. Where he gained even more strength and always remained cordial and polite, not as sloppy as his host and not as arrogant and proud as the boosted gear user who still firmly believed he was superior. Elsa was jealous of Tiamat, to say the least. If she wasn't trapped in that sacred gear, without a shadow of a doubt the Empress would try to make Issei her husband too, even though she knew she would have to share him with some other women. But that didn't matter, she was stuck in this sacred gears shit and couldn't enjoy her free will anymore, or she might feel like a woman again. However, Elsa knew one thing: if she could find Issei again, she was absolutely sure he could get her out of that sacred gear and make her feel what it was like to be alive again. Elsa was like any other supernatural being. Although she is human, the First Empress did not have the same life expectancy as humans, as just like Scathach, Elsa also acquired immortality after bathing in the blood of several enemies and powerful gods that she massacred, using her immense power. Abandoning these useless thoughts, Tiamat looked at Issei, who had his Azura in his arms as they both played. Only she and a few others could see this loving side of Issei, of how amazing he could be, not only as a father, but also as a husband and friend. Just thinking about the stupid things they did to Issei just for not revealing his power just completely pissed off Tiamat. How could they be so hypocritical? It really annoyed her, but she knew her husband didn't care about that sort of thing. It was just superficial feelings in his eyes. Tiamat knew that Issei didn't feel hatred or anger towards his family or anything like that. He could even forgive them, but forgiving is not the same as feeling feelings and much less caring about his family. Issei wouldn't worry about having to put up with his family. Issei only cared about his current family and nothing else, besides caring about his teachers who taught him everything they could, and without them, he was sure he wouldn't be able to reach the level he is today. Tiamat let out another indignant sigh as she ran her hand through her hair. Issei looked at her and walked towards Tiamat, with Azura in his hand, that was smiling happily as had his small hands pointed in the direction of his mother. Seeing this, Tiamat couldn't help but smile and stretched out her arms to catch Azura, who started laughing. Issei left Azura in Tiamat's hands and went to finish the meal. "You're going in the afternoon, aren't you?" Tiamat asked, catching Issei's attention. "Well, you're here making lunch, so I thought you'll go in the afternoon. Since everything you want, you'll do it faster," she said while caressing Azura's belly, who was laughing happily. "Normally I would be in a hurry to do it right away since I have to spend time with my family," Issei said with a smile as he turned to Tiamat, who was smiling beautifully. "But I have 2 hungry dragons that I can't let them take care of the house as they might set it on fire," he said, making Tiamat's eyes widen, and she looked away muttering, "So at least I have to leave here with lunch already prepared for you. And I'll be back before 6. I want to see if I can finish this research soon," Issei said, letting out a tired and relieved sigh, as he was almost done with his research. "You fool," Tiamat said with clear irritation, while frowning. "I never set the house on fire. What day was that?" she asked, clearly indignant as she pouted. "Never?" Issei said in a teasing tone, which irritated Tiamat. "Let me see if I remember. There was that day when you set the whole house on fire just because you didn't know how to handle the stove that exploded," he said with a laugh as Tiamat looked away and blushed with embarrassment. "You even forced me to create an easier and more practical stove that works by gestures, plus it wouldn't need natural gas to cook things but magic power to speed up the process," Issei said, scratching his head, as he remembers all the demands Tiamat had that day that forced him to follow and do everything, plus they had to leave the house as it exploded. Tiamat was about to say something, but was interrupted by a kiss from Issei on her full lips. Tiamat's eyes widened slightly, before accepting her husband's luscious kiss. "Be well, okay? My beautiful dragon," Issei said with a smile to break away from the kiss and kiss her forehead. "I love you and forever I will," he said to give Tiamat a hug, who started to cry, not from sadness but from joy. That incredibly emotion that she sometimes complained about could be felt one day, since she discovered something quite shocking to her side, and it made her become cold-hearted. Flashback. In one of her many settlements, a blue dragon was resting inside a cave, which had the remains of a recent battle, which can be confirmed by the corpse of another dragon a few meters from the blue dragon. The blue dragon was none other than Tiamat, just much younger, shortly after being given the title of Dragon Queen. At that time, Tiamat already knew the first Empress, Elsa, who had asked Tiamat to take care of this dragon. Though he didn't want to admit it, Tiamat knew that Elsa was much stronger than she was, and in a fight with the first Empress would only result in her death. Then she heard the request of her now considered friend. Suddenly, Tiamat's eyes began to open and lazily she sat up, looking at the place somewhat devastated by the previous night's fight. That dragon was really strong. Even with all my strength, it was hard for me to defeat him. I think Elsa will like my victory. Tiamat thought as she used her blue fire to burn her opponent's corpse, and then with her ice, she repaired the crumbling walls. But at least my partner will reward me for getting this place. She took comfort in thinking of her partner. I can't wait to see this. Tiamat sighed as she flew out of the cave. It's as you heard, Tiamat had a partner. Even if she had to share it with 2 other females, she didn't care. Polygamy was normal in her species, and she loved her male with all her heart. Her only regret was that he still hadn't loved her like she loved him. However, her heart skipped a beat when she saw how her partner lay between her 2 females, all 3 of them in their human form and naked, and that could only mean one thing, so lowering her power so as not to be discovered, she approached. "Oh Hayato-sama, it was a fantastic night." One of the women lying next to her spoke, caressing the male dragon's breasts. "I still don't understand why you keep keeping that deluded female," she said with venom in her voice. Hee, don't worry Hana-chan," Hayato said to pat Hana's head. "For me, you 2 are the only ones," he said to hug the 2 females he had next to her. "Tiamat is just a trophy for me, because after all, having a dragon king at your feet is something very satisfying," he finished with a proud smile. Tiamat was devastated. All the riches she amassed, all her love, everything she achieved in life, everything she did for him, only to find out that he only saw her as a prize totally devastated her. Tiamat felt her heart break into pieces, and slowly small tears formed on her face. Before she knew it, she was crying inconsolably. In her head she was trying to find a reason for all this, something to justify her lover's actions. Among all your waves of negative thoughts, 2 feelings slowly formed. Hate and anger. A dragon driven by hate and rage became evil dragons, and all that hate and rage was directed at the specific trio of dragons. Little by little, her tears stopped. Her feelings were still in a mess and her head was out of control, but something inside her wasn't the same. Something inside her broke into 1,000 pieces. And advancing slowly, she approached the trio of dragons, who immediately fell silent when they saw her, and the males sat down. "Hello honey, where have you been? I've been looking for you all night," Hayato said in his human form with a smile. Now Tiamat had finally realized. Her love had completely blinded her to see who was her true lover. "Liar!" Tiamat said angrily, and before any of the 3 dragons could react, a large amount of ice consumed them, leaving them frozen. "You lied to me all this time and you still had fun with it." She started to gather magic in her hand. "I should have listened to Elsa," Tiamat said with sadness in her voice, before turning back to a death glare as a great bloodlust left her body. "Now it will be mine. Instead of having fun," she said with a huge smile breaking the ice that covered the 3 dragons. "What do you think you're doing?" Hana yelled at Tiamat while she was in a mixture of anger and bewilderment. "You almost killed us!" she screamed in fury and surprise. "Tiamat-chan, calm down a bit, I love you, you know that," Hayato said calmly, but I could tell he was agitated. "You have 10 seconds to escape," Tiamat said with venom in her voice as she gathered a colossal amount of magic. "What are you waiting for? Did you think I couldn't find your lies?" she asked, leaving Hayato, Hana and Hikari surprised. "What are you saying, honey?" Hayato asked, feigning confusion. "Where did you get that?" "I knew that staying with that damn empress would cause this to you," he said in anger and frustration, for if Tiamat found out. "You have 5 seconds," Tiamat roared as her scales adorned her body. "You'd better run if you want to escape the Dragon Queen's wrath," she said angrily before unleashing a blast of her power towards the 3 dragons. "What do you mean?" Hikari was about to say something, but was interrupted when her head was pierced by an ice spear, causing her to fall dead to the ground, which horrified the other 2. "Finish your time," Tiamat said coldly as her draconic power expanded. "Die." She seriously told her draconic power to go towards Hayato and Hana, who didn't even have time to dodge, and were killed very easily. From afar, other dragons in the area saw how a seemingly calm mountain had been covered in ice in an instant, only to shatter into thousands of pieces, leaving the ground flat, and from that day on, Tiamat was nicknamed the Chaos Karma Dragon. From then on, Several cities were destroyed and drowned in fire, only to calm Tiamat, who was in a state of madness. The only one who was able to stop Tiamat was her best friend Elsa, who was forced to fight to calm Tiamat, which resulted in even more destruction. Elsa won and managed to calm Tiamat, who revealed everything that had happened. The first Empress was furious with everything Tiamat was saying. How dare that bastard do that? If he were still alive. Their relationship enjoyed peacefully, but when Tiamat heard news that Elsa had disappeared, she was left helpless and sad. There was no news about her friend, and it has been since she was called by the biblical god to fight. Tiamat knew that she had no devil or angel capable of harming Elsa, not even the original four great Mao or Seraphim. None of them had enough power to harm Elsa, who was indescribably stronger. Then how did Elsa disappear without leaving a trace? End of flashback. Tiamat's gaze was downcast as she reminisced about her past that she wished to forget with all her might. Issei noticed this and started singing his lover's favorite song, which always helped her calm down. Tiamat looked at him with watery eyes while looking weakened and weakened, nor did she look like the proud and powerful dragon queen of chaos and karma, the strongest among the dragon kings. Instantly Issei realized what was happening to Tiamat and smiled beautifully at his wife. Don't cry over water under the bridge. Try to live today as if it were tomorrow, and tomorrow as if it were today, Issei said calmly as he had a beautiful smile on his dazzling face. Sometimes crying is part of life. Is it like I always tell you no? Crying over things from the past means you won't be able to move forward on your journey, he said as he looked into Tiamat's eyes with great love and tenderness. Tiamat touched her chest, on the side where her heart was, and in tears she hugged the person she loved so much and who taught her why and how much true love can help. Besides, we have a beautiful daughter to take care of, and I don't think she would like to see her mom cry over things like that, would she? Issei said with a smile, making Tiamat rub her eyes to wipe away the tears that flowed. Not only her, but I don't like to see you cry either, my beautiful, he said to hug Tiamat tighter while still holding Azura in his arms, who was laughing softly. A smile formed on Tiamat's delicate face as she kissed her daughter's cheek, before returning her gaze to your husband. I'm glad I have you to be here with me always, Tiamat said wistfully, to give Issei a kiss. You don't know how much my life has changed, Issei. Since the day you went there and asked me to train you those 2 years where not only did you learn, but I learned too, she said with a huge smile forming on her face. My love for you couldn't be measured, nor could my love for our beautiful Azura, Tiamat said sweetly. His words rang out full of love and affection. Issei was going to say something, but was stopped when a loud noise was heard, interrupting the couple's cute moment. And this noise came from nowhere but Tiamat's hungry stomach. Tiamat was totally red at the floor, while Issei, who had a calm and affectionate smile, is ready, Issei said to Tiamat's delight, who stretched her hands up. Well, with that done, I'm on my way, honey. I'll probably be back before 6, okay? He said to Tiamat, who nodded positively. I hope you don't meet any girls on the way, Tiamat said seriously, while Issei waved nervously. Very well, I'll wait for you, she said to watch Issei take out 2 lasagna with 5 feet each, and with each thinking 5 kilos. Unconsciously, Tiamat began to salivate as the smell of food invaded her nose and made her belly wake up even more. Enjoy, I made everything you like to eat, Issei said with a smile before disappearing and leaving everything to Tiamat. Tiamat shook her head, looking at everything on the table. All the delicacies personally prepared by Issei, everything she liked the most was in front of her, and it didn't take long for the Dragon Queen to fall for her food. With Issei, he was walking around town. It was finally time for all his research to show results, and now there was only one more ingredient left to complete everything. It was a research that took more than 3 years for Issei to finally understand and be able to prepare everything that was necessary. After getting the last ingredient, and talking to some fans, Issei is finally able to go home. Issei calmly walked through the halls of his house, mansion, while analyzing everything and couldn't hear a thing, which was a likely clue that Tiamat and Azura were sleeping. And with his hypothesis raised, he started walking towards the living room where he saw Tiamat and Azura sleeping peacefully, hugging each other. What made Issei smile and grab a sheet to wrap them up. Seeing that they were still sleeping, Issei went to see the sink, and as expected, it was full of dirty dishes, and as he wanted to focus on finishing his research, Issei left 3 clones to finish the job for him. Arriving at his lab, Issei quickly opened the door and went to finish the last item needed to finish his research. Issei spent 2 hours to complete the last item. Looking around him, he saw his 2 creations that were not yet finished, and that he still had 2 hours to finish. Stored in a glass case was a katana. The tsukumaki handle is patterned closer to a real katana, with the blade having a slight curvature, giving it the traditional diamond shape in negative space. The tsuba/handguard is golden and a deep navy blue, in the shape of an octagon with 2 trapezoidal halves, each with patches of a golden dot pattern and in a tree motif with gold rings, inside which are several circles in groups of 3, arranged in triangular patterns, and the golden habaki/fuller also has a similar embossed pattern. The hamon featured is a kawazuko choji, or tadpole-headed carnation flower-style hamon similar to those found on blades historically made by Osafune Nagamitsu. The blade also received prominent temper lines. It was a demonic katana that he nicknamed Yamato. And beside the Yamato, in another glass case, was an ornate but rather plain sword. She had a red jewel attached to the top of the blade. A very thin sword compared to some other swords, it looked like it would break quickly. It was a sword made from hell's flames, so it was something too powerful. In addition to being made from the power of jewels, just like Yamato. And Issei named her Hell. But what most caught the attention of those who entered the laboratory was a necklace with 7 jewels of different colors. They were colored 7, one was red, another blue, another green, another yellow, another purple, another orange, and another golden. Issei looked at this necklace and analyzed it. Arthor, bro, do I wear a necklace or a ring? I had a doubt which one I would put. But at the moment I'll be referring to a necklace, okay? How the hell can something like that exist? Issei wondered when he saw the 7 jewels. The 7 infinity stones, they weren't created by anyone but the universe itself. For neither Great Red nor any other being would have enough power to create this. He thought a little confused as he placed his hand on his head. This has become quite troublesome, each gem has infinite power, Issei said in a sigh before picking up the last item needed to complete. Issei activated the Huiyan Jin Jing, because with it, he would have a better ability to understand and it would make it easier for him to be able to see his mistakes and increase the chances of success. Issei snapped his fingers and created an anti-sound barrier, which prevented the sound from coming out and waking up Tiamat or Azura. Issei started hammering the item until it took on the desired shape. The albino had asked the best divine blacksmith, Hephaestus, to teach him his blacksmithing skills and techniques. Hephaestus accepted Issei's request. Besides, the blacksmith god wanted someone he could talk to and vent to. Hephaestus also told Issei that whenever he came to Olympus, he tried his best to hide from Aphrodite so that she would not see him under any circumstances. Because as was said by Hephaestus himself or by any other god who had seen Issei, the boy was too beautiful and that would attract the goddess of love and beauty. Issei spent a year learning all of Hephaestus' techniques and skills, and promptly had to follow what he said about Aphrodite. To tell the truth, in all the pantheons that Issei visited and gained knowledge, he had to hide from all the goddesses who represented love, beauty, lust, desire among others. But not only that, he had to hide from all the other goddesses as it was a bit tricky to walk around the pantheons because of his appearance. Thanking Hephaestus for teaching him about blacksmithing, Issei began to prepare for finishing the object. Issei knew he had nothing that could resist or withstand the power of the 7 infinity stones, other than a material. An ore that is supposed to be able to withstand the power of the 7 jewels. Forming a beautiful necklace of Yaryu that was ornamented with several nuggets of adamantine ore that, when heated by the flames of hell, acquired a navy blue color, having the same color as the sky and the sea. Running a hand across his forehead, Issei wiped away the sweat that was pouring out and took a deep breath as he finished the necklace. His entire body had burn marks and several wounds that slowly healed. Letting out a sigh, Issei began to gather icy energy in his hands. He started to freeze the item that was now finished. It was difficult to maintain the ice because of the item's high temperature. Only Issei didn't give up and didn't mind expending much of his energy. Finally, Issei cheered before letting out a gleeful shout. That's it, I've finally completed what I've been studying for over 3 years. He said to lift the necklace up where it had 7 holes. The 7 infinity jewels, each one represents something about the universe. Issei said to crack your neck. It was true, the jewels practically contained the essence of the universe, and that's why they had unlimited powers. The red infinity gem, or also called the reality gem, grants the wearer the ability to manipulate reality. With mastery of this gem, the wearer can manipulate reality to carry out any will, breaking the laws of physics and nature. The gem allows you to create, destroy and alter anything around you, be it matter, energy or living beings. The blue infinity gem, or also called the space gem, grants the wielder the ability to teleport to any place in the universe in an instant through a portal of mist with blue glows. In addition to teleportation, which is its main power, the gem also has telekinesis powers advanced to the point of pulling a moon, creating black holes, highly resistant force fields, and rendering matter intangible. The yellow infinity gem, or also called the mind gem, possesses psionic powers, granting its wielder various mental powers. She has as main power, mind control, managing to control several beings at once. The wielder can also communicate telepathically with other minds and fire a powerful psionic beam from the gem. The purple infinity gem, or also called the power gem, gives access to all the power and energy that ever was or ever will be. The user becomes virtually invincible, as this object also has the ability to provide unlimited energy to any machine, or even its wielder. The green infinity gem, or also called the time gem, gives its bearer total dominion over the temporal dimension, even being able to manipulate events and change the course of history. Time travel, stopping, slowing or accelerating the flow of time, accelerate or delay aging, see past/future, etc. The orange infinity jewel, or also called the soul jewel, has the ability to manipulate the soul, the essence that creates the individual, also having the ability to resurrect and conjure spirit representations of dead people. The most dangerous among the 7 gems. The golden infinity gem, or also called the ego gem, allows the wearer to know the secrets of the universe and manipulate extra-dimensional energies. They all form the 7 infinity stones. And thanks to them, Issei was able to create Yamato and Inferno. Now all that remained was to finish Yamato and Inferno. Skip time. Issei had finally managed to finish Yamato and Inferno after an arduous and laborious process. Now it's time to test out his new weapons and the necklace he would put the 7 jewels on. Swallowing hard and hesitantly, Issei started to walk towards the 7 jewels that were stored in a glass case. Opening the box, Issei slowly took out the purple jewel, then the blue one, then the red one, then the orange one, then the green one, then the yellow one, and finally, the golden one. Thus he formed the most powerful amulet of all, which granted him infinite power and an extremely stolen range of abilities. Pondering the idea, Issei took the necklace, and when he was about to put it on his neck, Tiamat arrived and hugged him from behind, almost making the artifact fall to the floor, much to the dismay of Issei, who was sweating deeply. "Dear," Tiamat said, rubbing against Issei's back while having a smile. "I thought you hadn't arrived yet, but it looks like you immediately came to finish your research," she said calmly, but when she saw Issei's gaze she got a little scared. Issei gave a bun out at Tiamat for nearly making him drop the necklace. "Tiamat," Issei yelled a little angrily. "You almost dropped my research I took so long to do," he said, letting out an upset sigh, while Tiamat just played with her fingers. "I'm sorry," Tiamat muttered shyly, while playing with her fingers. "I didn't know you were holding your research," she said with regret. "I forgive you," Issei said, to put his hand on her head in caress. "Look at the results of my incessant research," he said with a smile to show the necklace to Tiamat, who had a confused look. "All those 3 years just for creating a necklace?" Tiamat did not understand correctly. "You're wondering why I spent so much time on an item like a necklace when I could buy it?" Issei asked an indirect question, and Tiamat nodded in agreement. "Well, it's not the necklace that's special, it's the jewelry on it. he said calmly as a happy smile formed on his face. Tiamat still looked confused and perplexed. I don't understand anything at all, which made Issei let out a sigh. Think of something, Issei said aesthetically, while waiting for what Tiamat would ask. Have you thought of something? He asked, and Tiamat nodded in agreement. What do I want? Tiamat spoke lightly before placing her hand on her chin. I already know what I want you all to myself today, she said, licking her lips sensually as she approached Issei, slowly moving her hips seductively. And it's not about that, you pervert, Issei stated very redly. It's not about perverted desires. I want to know if you want something different, he said, displeased with his wife's request. Don't blame me. You didn't explain anything, Tiamat said, refuting what her husband just said. And I'm not perverted. Well, just a little bit of nothing. You're the one making a fuss over something so silly, she said as she looked away and smiled proudly. Source, trust, Issei said in a teasing tone, which made Tiamat turn around and look at him. I don't know if you know, but who was the one who shamelessly raped me? The one that left me completely dry? And that now, my making a request in innocence has led to malice? He said sarcastically, which angered Tiamat. You idiot, I'm not perverted, Tiamat said, muttering as Issei crossed his arms and looked her up and down. Tisk, okay, I'm perverted, but what's the matter? You love me that way, she said proudly as she puffed out her huge breasts that swayed. You're right. You're unique the way you should be. And I love that about you, my precious, jealous, sugary dragon, Issei said with a smile, and Tiamat ran to hug him. And I'm not as jealous as you say, Tiamat said to pinch Issei, who just laughed a little. I just don't like those little hitches touching my male, she said to take Issei's face and bring it close to her mouth. You are my male, understand? Tiamat said to give Issei a kiss on the mouth. A fight between their tongues ensued, resulting in Issei's victory. I get it, my life, Issei said with a smile as Tiamat let go of him. Look over there, they were finished too, he said to point to Yamato and Inferno, who were standing on a table. Moved by curiosity, Tiamat approached the weapons. Issei, what's their name? Tiamat asked as his hand was almost reaching the hilt of Yamato. Don't touch them, Issei yelled, making Tiamat quickly take her hand away because of the fright she got. Don't touch them. They both have a will of their own and will kill you if they don't like you, he said while breathing heavily. Don't come any closer, please, Issei warned Tiamat, who backed away from close. The energy of the jewels is coursing through my body. If you disturb me at the most critical moment, I will die, he said, startling Tiamat, who put her hand over her mouth and just heard her husband scream in pain. Tiamat turned her face away, not wanting to see how her husband suffered in agonizing pain. 7 kinds of colors were coursing through Issei's body as he was holding himself back as much as possible so as not to be overwhelmed by the power of the gems. Black veins formed across Issei's face and body as blood poured out in large quantities, terrifying Tiamat. The 7 jewels that were in Issei's necklace began to glow brightly, as the overload on Issei increased. Boom! The sound of an explosion happened where Issei was, which surprised and made Tiamat desperate. Everything was destroyed without a trace, but suddenly, something like a green magic circle appeared and started to reverse. Time was turning back as he rebuilt the laboratory that had just been destroyed. Tiamat ran through the dust and saw Issei lying on the ground, while a green magic circle formed over his body and began to reverse the wounds and lost blood. I did it, honey, Issei said weakly, as tears began to form from the corner of Tiamat's eyes. Shut up, you idiot, and just think about surviving, Tiamat said as she picked up Issei and took him to bed so he could rest. Tiamat didn't leave Issei's side under any circumstances, she only left when Azura was crying. After a few days, Issei was slowly waking up. Lazily opening his eyes, Issei noticed Tiamat sleeping in a chair while having dark circles under her eyes. He smiled and quickly picked up his lover and placed her on the bed comfortably, taking a sheet and placing it on her. Issei looked at his body and saw that he changed again, not his physiognomy itself, but the fact that he has 7 new energies running through his body. these energies being nothing more than those of the 7 infinity stones. Don't die, you idiot, don't die! Issei heard Tiamat mutter something. Don't die, you bastard! You have me and Azura-chan to take care of. If you die, I'll come after you even in hell. She practically threatened Issei, who scratched his cheek in embarrassment. Who will take care of me if you die? Who? Don't think you could die never. Who will comfort me when I'm sad? Will I be a widowed mother and single? No, I don't want that. I want Azura to have a father present who can raise her with me, she said as her tears streamed down her face while she was still sleeping. Issei felt devastated that he had done something so dangerous, feeling like the worst father and husband ever. Relieving himself of these thoughts, Issei went to check on his daughter. Azura was still sleeping peacefully without any problems, or even being aware of the near-death danger that her father went through a few days ago. Azura was just hugging her teddy bear, which she liked so much, to the point of never letting go of it no matter what. The teddy bear was a birthday present when Azura turned 1 year old, and to this day, after 2 years, Azura still guards the toy with utmost care. Little Azura is almost 3 years old. It's not long before that happens. Issei calmly looked at Azura before leaving his daughter's room. Issei went to his lab and left some clones of her to prepare breakfast. Looking at the necklace that was on your chest. With this stone, I can finally get the 3 of you out of your sacred gear, Issei said, shaking his hand as he looked at the reality gem. The jewel glowed and the floor around Issei began to form a chair, and he sat down. Reality manipulation. Issei put his hand on his head, feeling that he could get in big trouble if these gems were revealed to the supernatural world. This is amazing in every way. I can just think and it will happen, he said happily with the jewel. However, it is also dangerous if you don't have a high degree of intelligence to use the jewel, Issei said, letting out a relieved sigh, as intelligence really was needed to use the reality jewel, and he had plenty of that. Looking around, Issei saw Yamato and Inferno still in the same place where they were 4 days ago. Looks like the explosion didn't affect them, Issei said calmly, walking towards the 2 weapons. You 2 are perfect creations that took me years to produce. Powerful and destructive weapons that have a life and will of their own. He said to put his hand on the hilt of both weapons and lift them up, even though it was apparent that he was afraid that both weapons would refuse him. What a relief! I thought you wouldn't choose me even though I am your creator, Issei said with a smile, appearing to be calmer. Author, the Yamato is from the game Devil May Cry, Devil May Cry 3, Devil May Cry 4 and Devil May Cry 5. If you want to know more information about it, search for Yamato vs. Battle, so you will find the weapon information. In this story, will Yamato have the same level of power and abilities as Beauty? When you search the wiki, you can see that it belongs to Tier 1C. Now Inferno doesn't belong to any kind of game or anime, I created it myself. She is at the same level as Yamato Tier 1C. Issei swung the Yamato to the floor, which formed a rip in the fabric of space. Issei entered and now found himself in a forest. So she could read my thoughts? Issei thought wonderingly as she looked at Yamato. If it is, it will help me a lot in the future. I was really thinking about the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. What a wonderful place to find species, he said with a smile, remembering the day he traveled to Brazil to study animals in the Amazon rainforest. Yamato, invisibility, Issei said and saw Yamato slowly disappear. It seemed to be being absorbed by space. Come back, he ordered, and Yamato reappeared in her hands, although she never left. Issei smiled happily as he cut through the space again and headed back to his house. Seeing that everything he worked for years bore fruit, Issei jumped for joy, and now he just had to wait for his beloved wife to wake up for him to reveal this wonderful news. Issei put Yamato in the sheath and went over to where Tiamat was sleeping. Issei saw that Tiamat was slowly opening her eyes, albeit lazily and unwillingly. But when she saw Issei, Tiamat quickly got out of bed and jumped on Issei. Good thing you're alive, good thing, Tiamat said with a tearful expression. You idiot, do you know how worried I was about you? You ungrateful, she said angrily before giving Issei a kiss. But I'm glad you're alive, because if you were dead, you could be sure that I would come get you even if you were in hell or in Tartarus. Do you hear me right? Tiamat said menacingly, before kissing Issei again. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you. Issei tried to apologize to Tiamat, who rolled her eyes, pouting. Oh, I'm sorry, my queen, I didn't do it on purpose. Besides, I managed to get everything done, and now I have a lot more free time to spend with you and Azura, he said with a smile, as his words rang through Tiamat's ears. The Dragon Queen quickly turned around to see him with an outgoing expression as she internally celebrated. That's it, finally this boring research is over and I can enjoy more time with my Issei. Tiamat thought happily as she celebrated, giving Issei several kisses. Yes, now you will be all mine and you will pay me for making me wait so long, she said, and Issei swallowed hard, but soon a smile formed on his face. Then you can start thanking this green jewel and Yamato, Issei said, leaving Tiamat confused. Because thanks to both of you, we can both indulge in sexual pleasure without worrying about Azura, he said as an even bigger smile formed on Tiamat's face, and she started to move on top of him. But what do they do? Tiamat asked curiously as Issei smiled. Well, the green gem will allow us to indulge our reproductive instincts without having to worry about time, as this gem manipulates time, Issei said with a smile as smoke came out of Tiamat's breath, who was panting. With Yamato, I will be able to create a whole new space where we can indulge and have fun like a crazy couple, he said with a smile as Tiamat lifted him off the ground. What are you waiting for? Let's go, I want it now, Tiamat said, full of energy. Is it okay soon? Let me at least feed Azura, Issei said calmly, and Tiamat nodded. Issei left the room and Tiamat went to the wardrobe where he put on some very sexy lingerie. After a while, Issei came back and was surprised to see how his beloved wife was doing. What are you waiting for? This body is all yours, Tiamat said to fiddle with her huge breasts that looked like they would break her bra at any moment. Come on, that bra is already bothering me, she said. Throw yourself at the Issei who trimmed her. Issei took Yamato and created a space where he can enjoy it with his beloved wife, Tiamat. The time gem on her necklace began to glow as time stood still. Chapter 2. With Issei. A blue portal suddenly appeared, and from it, two figures came out. Respectively, they were Issei and Tiamat. It was possible to see that the Dragon Queen had a satisfied smile and was limping, while Issei had a relaxed look. These jewels and this katana will be very useful, Tiamat thought happily, as thanks to the power of the Yamato and the jewels that made her something sensational available. I'm looking forward to the next time, dear, she said with a lascivious smile, while Issei was still calm. You idiot, I'm talking to you, Tiamat grunted, annoyed that Issei was ignoring her. Issei turned his gaze to her and calmly replied, I've heard it, honey. I know you like the Yamato and the jewelry, they're really amazing, he said, a little bored. And this red jewel here is going to be responsible for me getting Elsa out of the ceiling, Issei said with a smile as he pointed at the reality gem. Tiamat's eyes widened and soon tears began to form in the corners of her eyes. So I can finally see my friend again? Tiamat asked with a little surprise and a lot of joy. And what does this jewel do? She asked calmly as she rubbed her hand over her eyes to wipe away the tears. She manipulates reality, Issei said, leaving Tiamat shocked. It's not fake, that's totally true. With this thing here, I can do whatever I want. However, he paused as Tiamat's shocked look disappeared, and now she had a worried look. All these jewels that are in my necklace, they give me infinite power constantly, meaning if my body can't handle this power that enters my veins every second, I'll probably die, Issei said happily, as she knew this would never happen again. Meanwhile, Tiamat had a worried face. You're not going to die, are you, idiot? Tiamat asked, worried and upset that Issei didn't tell her this. I already told you, if you die I'll come get you, even if it means having to go to hell. She made an indirect threat to Issei, who just smiled awkwardly. Don't worry, Issei said in a calm and serene tone, making Tiamat a little less scared. I won't die even if the jewels give me infinite energy, he said, causing confusion in Tiamat, who tilted her head to the side. You know when my body exploded. So that was because my body was adapting to the power of the Infinity Stones. Now my body can't be hurt by anything or anyone while I have the jewels around my neck. Issei said, and Tiamat's scared look returned to normal. She was getting calmer and carefree. Fortunately, Tiamat said on a relieved sigh. So that explosion was a necessary thing, wasn't it? She exclaimed doubtfully, and Issei just waved his hand. I see, but that was dangerous, you damn thing. What if this process hadn't worked? You brainless, never do it again without my consent. Tiamat said angrily as her arms slowly wrapped around Issei's waist and pulled him into a hug. Issei put a beautiful smile on his face and hugged Tiamat tightly but affectionately. He started playing with Tiamat's hair, which kept patting Issei's hand. Stop messing with my stupid hair! Tiamat exclaimed angrily as she snatched Issei's hand from her hair. I've just styled it and made it beautiful, as well as untangling it, and now you come and mess it up again. She spoke furiously with Issei punching him in the chest. I told you countless times not to pull my hair hard and violently, you ignorant brute, Tiamat said as little tears formed in her eyes. Issei had a confused and disbelieving look. Tiamat was blaming him since she was the one who asked. But it was you. Issei was about to continue, but Tiamat blocked his mouth with her hand. Don't you dare refute your wife. If she said it's because it's true, Tiamat said accusingly while having a serious look. And I didn't ask, you did this to me, she said to pull her dress up and show her ass compared to her huge breasts. Tiamat showed her ass full of fingerprints and palms, red from the slaps she received from Issei. Tiamat grabbed her ass and squeezed it, while Issei had a stare directed at something. Are you wearing thong panties? Issei asked blatantly, which made Tiamat's face red and wide-eyed. She was only showing her scarred and red ass, but her husband only noticed that she was wearing thong panties. Tiamat's face began to steam as slowly a bright red hue took over her face. She quickly lowered her dress and slapped Issei across the face. You pervert! Tiamat yelled angrily as she jumped on top of Issei, who fell to the ground. You damn, there's no way I can call you a pervert, she said dejectedly, as she had no right to call Issei a pervert. Damn it, but at least you're my pervert, Tiamat said, annoyed as she kissed Issei and ran her hand over his chest. And you are my perverted seductress, Issei said affectionately. He didn't feel disgust for Tiamat's perverted way. On the contrary, he felt it more as a gesture of love and affection that is directed towards him by his wife. And even if he asked Tiamat to stop the perversion, it would be impossible for her to comply because it was already from factory. For a dragon to be perverted and lascivious with his partner was inevitable. Ding dong. The bell rang, taking the two out of their moment between couple. Damn it, I'm going to kill and then strangle whoever this person is who got in the way, Tiamat said menacingly as her scales showed over her white skin. Issei just smiled and kissed Tiamat on the mouth, which made the dragon queen calm down. Calm down, my queen. Don't get mad over something like that. We have plenty of time to enjoy, Issei said lasciviously, as he pointed to the time gem on his necklace positioned around his neck. Tiamat looked to where Issei was pointing and a huge smile formed on her face. Fufu, I had forgotten about that, Tiamat said as she brought one of Issei's hands to her full breasts. Don't hit me like you didn't, she said calmly, as Issei had a bead of sweat running down his cheek from his wife's bipolarity. Although I liked it, Tiamat thought with great lust, getting off Issei, who went to answer the door. Tiamat looked at the door and studied it some more, feeling the powerful presence of the person outside. So she came, Tiamat thought as she felt the presence of the person outside. Where's Azura-chan? She wondered, looking around as she hadn't heard her beautiful daughter crying since they woke up. Azura must be in the room, Tiamat thought, shrugging her shoulders and heading towards Azura's room. Arthor, I forgot to say, but the name of Azura means Azul Celeste, or blue sky. Issei opened the door and was a little surprised at the woman in front of him. Aren't you even going to invite me in? The person said playfully, making Issei laugh. No matter how many times I see you, you're always so handsome, Anata. The person spoke while giving Issei a hug, and he returned it. In front of Issei was a beautiful, mature woman, beautiful enough to be considered untouchable. The woman was only an inch taller than Issei. She had a golden dress that had a long cut over her two thighs, which turned out to be quite soft and smooth. The dress highlighted her large breasts, comparable to Tiamat's, they were so full. And yet, her legs and butt were up to par and even better than her big breasts as her ass shaped. A beauty comparable to Tiamat, Issei had no words to describe her, creamy skin as soft as wool. She was as pale as porcelain, looking very fragile. Her deep red eyes and beautiful expression exuded an incomparable serenity, as she wore that ornate gold dress that matched perfectly with her golden hair flowing freely down to her knees, looking silky and shiny. Enhanced the beauty of the woman who clearly already knew it. Arthor, what appearance do I leave? It is. Or is. She had a kind of golden crown on her head, as well as several horns. The woman was Kim, the Golden Queen, the goddess of the void, or also called Void Ghidorah. Arthor, the name, Kim, means among Koreans gold or golden. Kim was one of Issei's masters who taught him how to control his power more efficiently, as well as being the most powerful among his masters. Thanks to her, Issei was able to awaken his dragon form and use his scales to improve his defense. Arthor, if you search for Void Ghidorah fandom or versus battle, it should show his information. Void Ghidorah is low tier 2C, universe level plus. But here in this story she will be tier high 1B. She is much stronger than Yamato or Inferno. Aren't you going to invite me in, Anada? Kim asked calmly as a smile formed on her full lips. I see you haven't stopped training Fufu. Look at those arms and all-defined body. It makes me incredibly horny. She said lewdly as she touched Issei's body that she just had an amused look on her face. Where's my pretty little girl, dear? Issei asked, referring to his little daughter he had with Kim. Did she come with you, love? He said, what made Kim pout cute as her husband didn't even care about her. You idiot, you didn't even care about me. Kim grumbled under her breath in dissatisfaction, but it was audible enough for Issei to hear perfectly that she was annoyed. Just ask me about Helena-chan, don't even ask me if I'm okay. She said to turn away, not to look at Issei. Arthor, the name, Helena, means the Shining One, or beam of the sun. Issei smiled a little before putting his hand in Kim's hair. I'm sorry, okay, honey. Issei expressed herself calmly as she had a beautiful smile on her face. I apologize for that. I just love my daughters so much, and I always want to see them. He apologized to Kim, who turned her attention to him and kissed Issei's mouth. Issei was surprised as his face turned slightly flushed. So cute it makes me want to squeeze, Kim said to pinch Issei's cheeks. It doesn't even look like that monster when it comes to Hex. She said it casually, but you could hear Kim was starting to feel lust, which worried Issei. Come on, get inside, Issei said, waving his hand, and Kim entered the mansion. Tiamat must have gone upstairs to take care of Azura, he said calmly as Kim hugged him from behind, pressing her huge busts into Issei's back. Era, where is Tiamat-chan and Azura-chan? Kim asked, and Issei just looked at her before letting out a sigh. Fufu, don't be angry, it's been almost a month since I've been here. You should be glad to see me, she said to give Issei a pinch on the belly, while regretting having spent almost a month away from her lover. I don't know what's going on with you or Tiamat, but I feel like you two are getting really perverted lately, Issei said, showing curiosity as he brought one of his hands to her chin. Is it because of your race? Or because of your insatiable lust? Or because of yourselves? He questioned himself aloud in a rather interested tone. But before Kim could respond, Tiamat appeared with Azura in her arms. I think the three options, right, Kim-chan? Tiamat said with a smile as Kim smiled too and nodded. And the culprit for igniting our lust and activating our procreation instinct was you, my teddy bear, she said confidently as she left Azura in Issei's arms and ran to hug Kim. Issei let out a long, agitated, bored sigh, before sitting on the couch and starting to play with Azura. Ah, nada. Kim caught Issei's attention, who turned to see her. Helena-chan is with my sisters right now, that's why I didn't bring her with me. She clarified Issei's doubts, who just nodded his head positively. Skip time. It had been a few hours since Kim arrived, and since then, Issei was having a hard time satisfying his two hungry wives. I want more, Tiamat said, slamming her spoon on the table as her stomach. Bring me more food, dear, she said with a little anger at Issei's delay. Come on, Anada, If you take too long, my stomach will feel even hungrier, Kim said, causing Issei to shed a few tears as he had fed them both enough food to satisfy the hunger of hundreds of people. Hurry up and stop making me wait, she told Issei to speed up the food preparation. Damn, just as they have an immense sexual appetite, they also have hunger, Issei thought as tears streamed down his face as he practically worked like a convict. When will this suffering end? Being under pressure is too bad, even I can't handle the pressure they put on me, he said, letting out a sigh and taking a deep breath before increasing the speed at which he prepared the food. Skip time. Scene change. It was possible to see Issei walking slowly through the streets of London, England. It was really gratifying for him to spend time alone without his two wives, Tiamat or Kim, who were now sleeping with their bellies full. Issei slightly raised his gaze to the horizon over London Bridge, as he felt the cool and slightly icy breeze hit his body. Issei looked up as he filled his lungs with fresh air. Leaning on the bridge's handrail, Issei could look at everything that passed under London Bridge. He was lost in his thoughts that he didn't even see the person approaching him breathing heavily. Finally managed to find you, boy. The voice took Issei out of his concentration and made him go back to the author of that voice. For boy, do you know how much I had to look for you? I went to your house, you weren't there, and I had to walk practically all of London after you because of my stupidity. I forgot to ask Tiamat or Kim where you were. The voice completed as he regained strength and energy. Azazel, Issei said, surprised and happy at the same time. What are you doing here, my friend? He asked with a smile as he helped Azazel, who was still struggling. I came here to invite you to another faction meeting, Azazel said, regaining his composure as Issei looked away disinterestedly. I know you don't like the angel faction anything except Gabriel and the demon faction, but I asked you to come to this meeting, he said, making Issei turn his attention to him, showing great caution. And what would I gain from that? Issei asked directly, not wanting to stall and waste time with those damn hypocrites. And even if I go, don't think I would listen to what those idiots would say, he said coldly as he shrugged, showing he didn't care at all. Azazel just chuckled a little before patting Issei on the back. I didn't come here to call you to hear the bullshit they're going to talk about at that meeting, Azazel said, causing confusion in Issei. I came here to call you because Gabriel, Mahima, Penemu, Arthor, Artemis, Scathach, Elsa and Yasaka, they're filling my patience wanting me to reveal where you live, he said, to kneel down crying at Issei's feet. Please go, Issei. Don't make me go through that suffering again. They interrogated me as if I was a bandit who committed the greatest atrocities. You don't understand my pain, for please go, for God's sake, Azazel begged Issei while holding both of Issei's feet so he wouldn't escape. It was true what Azazel was saying. The leader of Grigori was suffering several persecutions from Issei's masters, taking out Yasaka, who didn't teach him anything. They were threatening to kill him if he didn't reveal where Issei was soon. But Azazel held fast to the promise he made to Issei not to reveal his location. Issei scratched his hair as he had a bead of sweat running down his cheek as he saw how Azazel was doing. He didn't expect his friend and former master to have suffered so much at the hands of his masters. Okay, I will go, Issei replied as Azazel's expression changed and now he had a huge smile. I'm going for you and my masters, mainly because I don't want to see you suffer from the persecution anymore, okay? He said, and Azazel frantically agreed. Well, you're practically the representative of the dragon race, Azazel said as he placed his hand on his chin. Well, you're married to Kim, who in theory is the first dragon of the Ghidorah race, as well as the strongest. Much stronger than the Great Red and Trihexa, he explained before letting out a relieved sigh. Well, I'll go back to my house. Tiamat and Kim won't like it if I take too long, Issei said calmly as Azazel waved his hand. Oh, and what time is the meeting and in your day too? He asked, and Azazel started to think, to try to remember. Oh, that's right. It will be 2 days from now, and practically the leaders of the pantheons that are together in the peace treaty will also be there, Azazel said, and Issei just smiled and waved his hand, before disappearing. Azazel just watched Issei disappear with a slight smile. That boy who was belittled his whole life for being someone without mana or sacred gear was actually someone strong, monstrous, who was able to dominate someone like Kim, not in strength but in other things. Ha, you are amazing, boy. Azazel thought as he let out a long, frustrated sigh as he remembered that he would have to deal with Gabriel, Mahima, Penemu, Arthor, Artemis, Scathach, Elsa, and Yasaka. Now I just need to send a message for them to attend the meeting and see their beloved student. He thought amusedly before looking at the horizon. The horizon is really beautiful today, Azazel thought as he lamented. Azazel returned to Grigori and started a call to each of Issei's masters, except for Yasaka as she is part of the peace treaty. With Artemis. Standing high in a tree was a tall woman with a well-built body. She has shoulder-length black hair and striking silver-gray eyes that can easily intimidate her when she's angry. She was an extremely beautiful woman who possesses a slender and phenomenal body that perfectly matched the contrast of her appearance. She was Artemis, the Greek goddess of hunting, the moon, chastity, childbirth, and wild animals. She was standing there resting while thinking about Issei whenever she could. In that cheerful and kind boy, besides being extremely intelligent to the point of mastering his techniques with the bow and arrow perfectly. Artemis couldn't believe that someone like Issei had suffered so much at the hands of those hypocrites. She even pondered the idea of trying to convince her father to drop and abandon this peace treaty with those assholes. The Greek goddess was very concerned about her one and only disciple who was able to face her father, Zeus, and her two uncles, Poseidon and Hades, in a battle using the same techniques she learned from her. Artemis couldn't help but feel proud. She never thought that her disciple would face and defeat his father and uncles, who formed the Trinity of Olympus using his techniques and skills with the bow and arrow. Artemis looked around and saw some wild animals that were trying to climb the tree to get close to her. Artemis let a small smile form on her beautiful face, and she climbed down from the tree to meet the wild animals. She started playing with the animals to take her stress off and her thoughts about Issei. Suddenly, Artemis received a communication from Azazel that interrupted what she was doing. Artemis let out a long, agitated sigh in annoyance. Azazel probably knows where his beloved student is, but he doesn't want to talk at all, even if he threatens to torture or kill him. She answered the communication and then asked, "What does Azazel want?" Artemis asked seriously as he had his gaze directed to the wild animals around him. Azazel took a while to respond as he seemed to be fixing something. "Has it started yet? Good. Artemis came here to invite you to the meeting that will take place in the next 2 days. Azazel spoke calmly as Artemis looked away in disinterest. "I'm not in the mood. My father and Uncle Hades will probably go, as will Uncle Poseidon. So why would I? Since I have no reason to?" Artemis exclaimed indifferently, almost ending the call. "Yeah, you're just like Issei said," Azazel said to earn a glare from Artemis. "Tell me what you want, Azazel. Stop wasting my time," Artemis said coldly as Azazel let out a sigh and took a deep breath. "Well, I know that Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades are going to this meeting, but I'm only calling you because this meeting will be someone you really want to see." Azazel spoke calmly as Artemis's serious gaze changed to a curious one. "About me enjoying watching you're not talking about." Artemis was going to continue, but was cut off by Azazel. "That's right, Issei will be at that meeting. I called him," Azazel said as Artemis's eyes widened in surprise and happiness. "Why didn't you say this before? It's obvious I will." Artemis squealed happily and motivated, which startled the wild animals momentarily. "Well, you didn't. So that's what I had to talk to you about," Azazel said to end the call. With divine speed, Artemis ran towards Olympus to ask her father to let her go too. Zeus was somewhat confused by this, as his daughter showed no interest in the peace treaty and even refused to marry the Takeda. Well, to tell you the truth, Zeus actually liked how he was turned down, that arrogantly spoiled piece of shit. Zeus didn't even have thoughts of handing Artemis over to an asshole like Takeda, nor had the possibility of marriage crossed his mind, as he knows that his daughter loves Issei so much, and he always saw her cry because of how he disappeared. Zeus was furious at how the factions of angels and demons belittled Issei and blamed him without any proof. Everyone who knew Issei knew that video was fake. He even pondered the idea of giving up and abandoning the peace treaty that he was only able to keep because of Issei's wish. Even his daughter Artemis wanted him out of the treaty. Immediately Zeus was happy, as he had never seen such determination in Artemis's eyes that he wanted to go on a meeting with the factions, but soon he discovered why so much determination and joy on the part of Artemis. With Gabriel, it was possible to see a beautiful woman crying helplessly in her bed. Arthor, which look do you think is best? This one here. It's here too. Or is. They decide there, and the one with the most votes will win. But for now it will keep its original appearance, at least I think. It was Gabriel, one of the seraphim and the most beautiful woman in heaven. And she wasn't crying for anything but Issei. Gabriel was one of the most affected. He knew Issei's pure heart, and he knew how kind he was. And that kind, friendly and extremely kind heart made her fall in love with Issei, whom she once taught on how to improve control over the light element, her first and beloved disciple. Gabriel was left speechless when he saw his own brother, the one she loved the most, and one day she wanted to be accusing her lover of something he never did. Since the day she saw her disciple cry in front of her asking her not to cry on her cue, Gabriel couldn't help but cry. It was impossible for her. Her fragile heart couldn't take so much emotion. Outside her room was her friend Griselda, who was trying to enter her room, but the door was closed and locked. One day, to the despair of the seraphim, Gabriel tried to rip his own wings because he thought it was her fault that Issei was trapped in the worst place there is, so that lovely boy, so kind as to make her think he was an angel in human form. The only one who managed to calm her down so that she wouldn't commit such madness was Azazel, who comforted her, and said that Issei was fine. Gabriel thought Issei had been killed because of the destruction of Tartarus, and so knowing that her lover was alive was the best news he had to give her. Griselda managed to get into her master and friend's room and sat down on the bed. "Please get out of here, Griselda." It wasn't the sweet, gentle voice that Griselda always heard from Gabriel. It was a high-pitched, tearful, fearful, "Please leave me alone," Gabriel said as he turned away so he wouldn't have to look at Griselda. Griselda was opening her mouth to speak, but her voice didn't come out. She couldn't help but feel sorry for her master, as she saw her in this precarious state. Scaring them both, even if unintentionally, Azazel's call made Gabriel stop crying. But it was impossible not to notice Gabriel's red gaze. "I see you're crying again. But I have news that will please you a lot," Azazel said calmly while having a smile. Gabriel and Griselda cocked their heads to the side as they had an eyebrow raised in a clear sign of doubt. "Good, but for you to know, you'll need to go to the factions meeting that will take place in 2 days," Azazel told Gabriel to lose interest. Gabriel could go easily, only she couldn't see the faces of Scathach and Seraphal, and her own brother, Michael, beyond Takeda's evil face and heart. Seraphim couldn't understand how someone as pure as Issei could come from such a family. "I know you can't even get in the face of Scathach, Seraphal, or Michael. But I ask you to go, as Issei will be there. Did I manage to convince you to go, okay?" Azazel said, for the rest of Gabriel's tearful estio become one of immeasurable joy. Gabriel quickly got up from the bed to get a better look at the state of his body. His face soon took on an intense red color when he saw that he was only of underwear, panties and bra, and right in front of the pervert Azazel. Griselda stepped in front of Gabriel to shield her from Azazel's sinful gaze, but she and Gabriel were surprised to see that Azazel didn't even show a sign of perversion, which left them both confused, as they didn't expect this from Azazel. "I just came to give you this warning. See you later," Azazel said even under the call. Gabriel dressed in an outfit and begged Griselda to make a remake of it. Gabriel was immensely beautiful, and that was an undeniable fact, even after crying a lot. So she wouldn't have to mess with her appearance or body. But she wanted to see her lover and be beautiful for him. Although Gabriel knows Issei doesn't care about it. With Arthoria, it was possible to see a beautiful blonde-haired woman with a sword ornamented with a golden material. It did not appear to be gold. She was practicing in the hall, and through one of the windows it was possible to see a huge castle that seemed to cover the sun. "Arthor, this is what Arthoria looks like in this story." It was Arthoria Pendragon, the saint of the sword and descendant of King Arthur Pendragon. Arthoria was trying her swordsmanship better, but she couldn't find anyone who was able to fight her, and that was making the Lion King disappointed. It's been 5 years since she hasn't heard from Issei, her dear disciple who made her feel like fighting and a strong desire to become stronger. And she became strong, very strong. But thanks to that, no one was able to satisfy her in a fight. Everyone was weak and worthless to her. Even her brother, Arthor Pendragon, who is also a descendant of King Arthur, as well as bearing his name, as well as being the wielder of the ultimate holy sword, Caliban. He couldn't give her a fight which the sword saint could let go and fight as she wanted without having to hold back. Issei was the one to give her an immense will to fight, someone who really motivated her to overcome. Although Issei used Arthoria's techniques and abilities, he managed to evolve every skill and technique to levels higher than the Lion King. Arthoria planted the Excalibur on the ground and placed her hand on her chest, feeling her heart thudding distinctly. Well, it was even to be expected since she just finished an intense training to see if she could improve her mastery with the sword even more. Looking around, Arthoria was able to make out her brother Arthur and her sister Le-Fay Pendragon, a descendant of Morgana Le-Fay. Le-Fay ran towards Arthoria as she had a towel in her hands. "Take sister," Le-Fay said with a smile and gave the towel to Arthoria, who just looked at her rolling her eyes, which saddened the descendant of Morgana Le-Fay. Le-Fay knew that her sister technically didn't hate her, but rather was extremely disappointed in her. Arthoria stood up without even thanking Le-Fay, who sadly bowed her head as small tears formed on her face. Arthoria didn't pay much attention to Le-Fay, who was crying, while Arthur went to try to get satisfaction. "Hey Arthoria, are you an idiot? Look what you did to Le-Fay." Arthur tried to look elegant, but he was angry with Arthoria. "At least thank her for giving you the towel after your training," he exclaimed angrily as Arthoria turned her attention to him. Arthoria picked up Excalibur from the ground and pointed it at Arthur. Arthur's eyes widened as he saw the Excalibur blade glow brightly and shoot a beam of light towards him. Arthur could only dodge his head to avoid getting hit, as the beam of light was extremely small and powerful. The attack was devastating and came out destroying everything in its path, destroying the peak of 3 mountains that disappeared without a trace. Arthur was a little worried when he saw his own sister almost kill him, as he knew that if that ray of light hit him, it was the end for him. "Don't you dare talk to me, weakling. And I could easily get up and grab the towel or ask Excalibur to do it." Arthoria spoke irritably as the Excalibur stopped glowing. "Also, I don't remember asking her for anything. She gave it to me because she wanted to," she said nonchalantly, turning her attention to cleaning the Excalibur. Arthur saw that Le-Fay began to cry even more as he ran out of the hall. Le-Fay knew that what she did to Issei was unjustified, but she had been trying to get her sister's forgiveness for over 5 years and nothing. She only received contempt and disgust from Arthoria, who became extremely indifferent to Le-Fay's existence. "You ignorant piece of shit," Arthur spoke angrily as he summoned Caliban. "She doesn't deserve the scorn you give, asshole. Le-Fay is trying to apologize for the way she despised that boy," he said to advance on top of Arthoria. The knights who were watching the quarrel between the descendants of King Arthor Pendragon could not help but feel sorry for Arthur, the wielder of Caliban. It was obvious that the difference in strength between him and the wielder of Excalibur was immeasurable. It doesn't matter if Caliban was the strongest holy sword, Excalibur wielded by Arthoria not considered a god-level weapon for nothing. Arthoria's swordsmanship was much more advanced than Arthur's. Arthur advanced towards Arthoria with Caliban in hand, holding it tightly. Meanwhile, Arthoria wasn't even paying attention to him, for even though his speed is enormous compared to the knights present there, to Arthoria, Arthur was something like a snail. He was so slow. In an instant, Arthur appeared on Arthoria's back as a very strong holy aura poured out of Caliban. Arthur swung the ultimate holy sword in a quick and precise motion, vertically tilting the Caliban's blade, which unleashed a powerful bolt of lightning. Arthoria let out a long, irritated sigh. She couldn't believe her pathetic, weak brother would want to face her even knowing the absolute difference in power. Arthoria didn't hate or harbor any feelings of revenge towards Le-Fay or Arthur. She was just immensely disappointed and saddened by what they both did to her disciple, especially Le-Fay. The Sword Saint knew that Issei had a feeling of love for Lefei, and this created an anguished feeling in her heart at the thought that she would have Issei stolen from her. It was pretty much the same feelings that all of Issei's other masters had. The Lion King saw how his sister rejected and even humiliated Issei in front of everyone who laughed at the poor boy. Arthoria felt a huge fury rise in her chest to the point that she considered killing her own little sister. Arthor, on the other hand, was because he laughed and made fun of Issei even more in front of everyone. And since then, the sibling relationship has become strained as Arthor or Lefei try to get closer to Arthoria, who quickly represses and coldly denies them. There came a time when Uther Pendragon and Oriana Pendragon, the father of Arthoria, Arthor and Lefei, that they were forced to intervene in the fight between the three. Arthor, I gave the name Oriana, which means gold or sunrise dawn. If you know about the DxD universe, you'll know that Arthor and Lefei Pendragon have a mother, but her name hasn't been confirmed. So I gave this name to better help the story's prosperity. Uther and Oriana knew the reason for the fight. Sometimes they even had to agree with Arthoria. Both felt sorry for Arthor and Lefei, as they were despised and looked down upon by Arthoria, who came to be cold and indifferent towards them, not giving the slightest thought about the existence of her two younger brothers. Clicking her tongue, the Excalibur that Arthoria had in her lap moved by itself and defended her without much trouble from Arthur's attack. Pathetic, Arthoria said with venom in his voice. Next time, think carefully before you challenge me, for know that I will not forgive you, even if you are my brother. She said seriously, and with divine speed, Arthoria appeared in front of Arthor, and smoothly sliding her fist, she hit Arthor in the face, sending him flying into the wall. Never raise your sword to a knight unless you want to be dead, weakling. Lifting a sword and attacking a warrior is the same as declaring a duel, however indirectly. Arthoria said indifferently as water came out of the Excalibur's blade and wiped the blonde's hands. Arthoria looked at Arthur's bloodied body on the wall without showing any trace of emotion or concern, just looking at Arthur with contempt. Get that worm out of here. His presence is bothering me, Arthoria said, looking at the knights who promptly took the unconscious Arthur's body to a healer mage. Arthoria snapped her neck and fingers and guided the Excalibur into its sheath, beginning to meditate to calm her mind and stress. In addition to improving your control over magic and your magic power. But to her displeasure, she can't even do that since Azazel called her. What do you want, Azazel? Arthoria asked indifferently, already knowing who the call was from. I came here to see if you were going to the faction meeting 2 days ago, Azazel said as several rage veins and marks formed in Arthoria. Did you disturb my meditation just to say something stupid like that? Why the hell would I go to a meeting where there are only assholes? Runf, that would just be a waste of time, and the time I'd waste on those hypocrites is time that I spend increasing my strength, Arthoria said, clicking his tongue annoyed. Azazel chuckled a little and replied, Well, it's a pity to bear in mind that you won't. Then you might miss the opportunity, he said, gaining Arthoria's attention. What do you mean? Arthoria asked, serious and curious. Well, as I said, 2 days from now the meeting between the factions will take place. And out of everyone there, one person is the one who will make you go, Azazel said jokingly as Arthoria processed and retrieved information from his memories. Ha ha, it's Issei, he said, surprising Arthoria, who was wide-eyed. Really? Arthoria asked as she allowed a smile to form on her face. Finally, but that's true, isn't it? If not, I'll send you 6 feet underground. She threatened Azazel with death while he was sweating nervously. Relax, Azazel said with a calmer attitude. He will. I talked to him and convinced him to go. Thank me? He said to hang up on Arthoria, who had a tick in her eye because of it. But soon she was happy to see which disciple of hers would be in that uninteresting meeting. Arthoria lifted her head as her cheeks took on a faint shade of red. With Azazel. It was possible to see Azazel sitting on a chair in an office. In front of her was a beautiful woman with long purple hair and eyes the same color, only paler. Her beauty was really impressive and would leave anyone speechless. In addition to having a voluptuous figure, with large breasts and a firm and voluminous ass. Arthor, I don't know if this is Penemu's true appearance, as they say she looks like Scathach. But if it's not, Bucket, it's going to stay like this. I'm not coming back here to change a damn thing. It was Penemu, one of the leaders of the fallen angels whose position is that of chief secretary, in addition to being one of Issei's masters. And beside Penemu was another beautiful woman with greenish-white hair that reached her upper back. Her beauty was outsized, even if you compare her to Venus or Aphrodite. Her very pale skin matched her black dress and some silver ruffles that revealed her breasts at the top. Her breasts weren't as big as Penemu's or many others, but her beauty pretty much erased that. Her figure would make any man, human or divine, fall into temptation and lust and desire her tightly. Her eyes had a slightly dark pink tint. It was Mahima, one of the leaders of Grigori and a fallen angel with 12 wings as black as the darkest night, and considered the most beautiful woman in Grigori. Arthor, the name, Mahima, means Moonlight Hawaiian, and this character is new, does not exist in the DxD canon. It's something created from my imagination, so you won't find it in the anime or manga. What does Azazel need? Mahima asked calmly as her beautiful voice was music to Azazel's ears. Well, I came here to tell you to go to the faction meeting that will take place in 2 days, Azazel said as he stretched out in his chair and put his foot on the table. Mahima and Penemu were upset, as they didn't want to waste their time with those disgusting ones, but looking for clues about Issei's location, as Azazel doesn't want to say anything about where he might be. Honestly, they were already getting annoyed with Azazel. Both wanted to know where their lover was. Issei was honestly the only good thing that happened in their lives after the death of their respective brothers. Penemu and Mahima's brothers died in a battle with Drake and Albion. In fact, they only died because they meddled where they weren't called, and that kind of created a conflicted feeling in the hearts of both of them. They didn't know whether to hate Drake and Albion or blame their brothers for their ignorance in trying to challenge the 2 heavenly dragons. Letting out a sigh, it was really pathetic to remember this. It was more than obvious that it was their brother's fault who arrogantly believed they could defeat Albion and Drake. Plus, there was that arrogant spoiled brat who kept pestering them to be part of his harem. And they were both sure he was just someone who thought himself. Issei was much more handsome than he was when they still had news, and both Mahima and Penemu knew that, in addition to being much more handsome, Issei was someone who knows how to treat a woman in the best possible way, not trying to take advantage of her body. Mahima and Penemu knew that even if all the women were naked in front of Issei, he would definitely look at the eyes and not the naked body. They both knew that Issei wasn't someone who moved by lust but by love. The complete opposite of his brother Takeda, who just wanted to take advantage and take possession of the bodies of the unsuspecting and idiots. No thank you very much. Mahima denied what Azazel softly asked. I don't have time to waste on them. Plus, there's that annoying kid who pisses me off. She spoke calmly, but it was possible to feel the contempt and disgust she felt for those who harmed Issei. Ha 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 ha, I already knew you would deny it, which is why I went to speak with Issei personally, Azazel said while letting out a laugh, but he soon realized that both Penemu and Mahima were on top of him. Where is he? Penemu ordered Azazel to talk about Issei's location. Too bad, but I won't be able to tell you right now. How about you guys talk to him? Azazel said with an amused smile as he took Penemu's hand from the collar of his coat. Penemu and Mahima were a little confused as they had an eyebrow raised. Well, I managed to convince Issei to go to the faction meeting in 2 days. You should thank me for not trying to hit me, Azazel said with a smile, but he realized he was being ignored as Mahima and Penemu were lost in their thoughts. I can finally see him after so long. Mahima was the first to break out of her thoughts and speak. Her calm voice sounded a little rough and worried, plus he could hear joy. Yes, now excuse me as I need to notify Scathach as well, Azazel said to pick up the phone and start a call with Scathach. With Scathach. It was possible to see a charming tall woman with long burgundy hair that flowed down her back and her deep crimson red eyes. She had an athletic build that made women cry with envy. She had only her underwear in use and was in front of a crystal-clear sea. She was none other than Scathach, the immortal witch and queen of the Shadowlands. Just like one of the first masters. Scathach wasn't too concerned about whether Issei was alive, for as she proudly puts it, he's my disciple. And if he dies for something that clumsy, I must say I'm disappointed. That's what she always replied when asked if she was feeling bad or uncomfortable with Issei's possible death. Looking around, Scathach could see that everyone's eyes on that beach were on her, which wasn't much to expect. Her beauty and athletic bearing gave everyone just a glimpse of what the Shadow Queen really was. A pretty face that killed deities. If she told that to any human, which one would she believe? Gods don't even exist. She must be out of her mind, as she has probably snorted cola or is totally drunk and delusional, in need of an urgent asylum. Relaxing while she had an alcohol cocktail in her hand, Scathach lay back in the chair as she was bathed in the sun's rays that lightly touched her white skin. Getting up from his chair, because Scathach didn't feel like staying on that beach anymore, she headed towards the hotel, where she immediately went upstairs to her room. Scathach headed for the bathroom, where she took a long, relaxing bath to ease the tensions from her body and calm her stressed mind. Wearing lingerie that matched her hair, she put on a sheer black nightgown. Scathach threw herself on the large, luxurious bed in her bedroom as her eyes roamed the entire room. Seeing that he had a bottle of whiskey at his side, Scathach quickly opened it and took a glass, starting to drink it happily, tasting the wonders that money can buy. But soon her joy was cut short when a call from Azazel snapped her out of her moment. Scathach clicked her tongue as she muttered, annoyed and frustrated. "I'll be straight, as I can see you enjoying yourself." Azazel spoke as Scathach huffed. "Well, 2 days from now the faction meeting will take place, and what I'm going to talk about will probably make you go," he said in a cheerful tone, while the Scathach had a curious look and a dubious expression. "And what would that be?" Scathach said nonchalantly, shrugging off his speech. There was nothing between the factions that caught his attention. Everything was boring and repetitive. Well, living for more than 2,000 years was really obstructing your feelings and emotions a little, leaving only the absolute boredom and what a repeat, without changing. And in those 2,000 years, in a pool of limitless boredom, came the light that lit up his days, Issei. Scathach had found in Issei something he never found in any other man, a drinking companion and an incredible disciple. For the immortal witch, Issei was truly the best thing that happened in her boring, repetitive life. Someone who was the brother of the Security and the host of the Queen's Crown, an artifact that contains the soul of Elsa, the first Empress, being said to have a power comparable, or even superior to the Great Red or Trihexa. Someone adored by his people for being an unshakable, irrefutable force. "Your disciple, Issei," Azazel said, surprising Scathach slightly. "So that brat is already getting into trouble," Scathach said as he turned his gaze to Azazel's call. "Very well, I'll come," she said with a small smile, which made Azazel laugh and hang up the call. "Finally you're back, brat," Scathach said to take her hand to her intimacy and start touching herself. "I hope you amuse me when I see you, my disciple," she said in a lascivious and seductive voice as she started to masturbate more aggressively. With Yasaka, it was possible, a young woman with a voluptuous figure and very long blonde hair with matching eyes. She is a woman with delicate facial features, and her eyebrows are cropped very short and rounded, a symbol of nobility. Her hair was tied in a loose ponytail, reaching down to her legs that ended in a spiral, with bandages taut to keep it in place. She wears a traditional priestess attire, and over that she wears a white coat closed by a red ribbon and a golden crown. It was Yasaka, leader of the Western Yukai faction in Kyoto. She was sitting at a table, and beside her was her little daughter. No, she stopped being 2 years ago. Her little cute daughter didn't even look like that young child with the appearance of an elementary school student anymore. Her beautiful Kunu was now extremely beautiful, much like her or even surpassing her. Kunu has acquired a voluptuous figure with large breasts and a slim waist, with her but on par with her breasts. The 9 foxtails opened slightly, revealing and giving Kunu even more beautiful contrast. At the tip of each tail, where there was no gold, white was the highlight. Her daughter's beauty made Yasaka have several problems with commitment, especially with Takeda, who was constantly trying to court Kunu. Her daughter hated Takeda with all her strength. Well, so does she, but not like Kunu, who rejects him and still humiliates the Security. And as he justified his actions, Kunu always said, "He deserves it, Thanks to him, Kunu was also humiliated. Although Yasaka does like the way Kunu treats Takeda. This was her way of answering when Yasaka asked why she always humiliated Takeda when he tried to flirt with her. Yasaka knew that, thanks to the destruction of Tartarus and the disappearance of Issei, Kunu acquired a cold and direct personality, in addition to now being much more responsible and not looking for fun, like young people always do. Tousling her hair, Yasaka felt irritated seeing the piles of papers on her desk. If Issei was there, he could easily help her get rid of that endless paperwork, because no matter how much she finished, there were always more. Kunu glanced at her mother and went back to seeing the paperwork that had been addressed to her. Being the leader's daughter kind of paid off for her. It is. Yasaka spoke, rubbing her forehead with a hand to wipe away the sweat. Damn hellish paperwork, she said angrily as she banged on her desk, which made Kunu laugh lightly. Oh, it's really Kunu, Yasaka said, catching Kunu's attention, who turned to see her. What's up, Mom? Kunu asked calmly, looking at Yasaka. Did something happen that I don't know about? Or did that arrogant spoiled brat come here again to bother me? She roared furiously, and you could see the disgust and venom in her words directed at Takeda. That pathetic little arrogant. I think I'm going to be another idiot like those others over there, who love him. Ridiculous, I would never love someone like him, and all my love goes to Kunu. Kunu said angrily, to then soften and say affectionately when she spoke of Issei. My daughter is totally in love, Yasaka said in a teasing tone. Fufu, talking like that makes you look like a little fox in love who has found her lover, she said with an amused smile as Kunu crossed her arms. You're serious, ha ha ho? Kunu said, pouting. You don't stay behind me. Remember when she almost raped Kunu shamelessly and I had to intervene so that didn't happen? She asked with mild disinterest, but jealousy was visible in her voice. You just stopped me from raping out of jealousy, didn't you? Yasaka asked with a seductive smile while enjoying her daughter's facial expressions. I know you wanted Issei-chan too, you pervert. And in order not to lose to your ha-ho, you stopped me, she said, teasing her daughter, who blushed heavily. Arthor, ha-ho means mother. And nothing, ha-ho, Kunu stuttered nervously, trying to refute what her mother said, even though everything Yasaka said was true. Well, at least a little, she muttered under her breath, but Yasaka heard what she said and laughed a little. Well, that's not what I wanted to say. Yasaka quickly changed the subject. I was going to say that you're going with me to the faction meeting in 2 days' time, she said, making Kunu roll her eyes and ignore that request. I won't, ha-ho. I don't want to be around those hypocrites, especially the spoiled selfish one who thinks all women belong to him. Kunu spoke with disgust and contempt while her mother just placed her hand on her head and caressed, making Kunu purr. Ha-ho, I don't want to go. That place makes me sick, she said nonchalantly, returning her gaze to the paperwork. I didn't want you to go either, but you're my daughter. So it's pretty much your job too, Yasaka said, causing Kunu to let out an upset sigh. Besides, I feel that this meeting will be interesting and very pleasant. I have a good feeling about it, she said, putting her hand on the table. Well, for now, ignore it, 2 days to go, Kunu said as she turned her attention to the paperwork. Now we have to sort out the paperwork, our biggest enemy, she said, determined to get the paperwork done soon so she can rest. Yasaka clicked her tongue and she and her daughter decided to finish off their biggest enemy at the moment. With Issei. It was possible to see Issei opening his eyes slowly. He looked a little tired. His eyes slowly opened as he looked around. Next to Issei were Tiamat and Kim, with a satisfied smile on their faces. Her body covered in heman, which you could tell they had hex-like dogs in heat again. Both were hugging Issei with their bodies pressed against his as the albino tried to gather energy. His whole body ached and he couldn't understand why. His brain was awake, but it felt like his body wasn't. Was this what they call sleep paralysis? However, this was totally different from what Issei heard about reports from people who had been through it. His head was hurting badly and Issei felt as if hundreds of trucks had crushed him. Issei was trying to gather the information from his brain, which was still kind of hazy. Memories of what happened began to flow through his brain. As he slowly remembered what happened, his body trembled slightly as he felt slight convulsions. He was drugged by Tiamat and Kim, They gave him a drink, and this drink was full of aphrodisiacs that awoke him and left him with immense lust, which was only quenched after many, many hours of hex with Tiamat and Kim. It looks like he will really suffer now, thanks to the power of the time gem, and the Yamato will be really troublesome. Tiamat and Kim have virtually limitless lust and desire, especially now that their mating season is upon us. Both are lusting after Issei more than anything, and in order for him to satisfy them, they had to play dirty and drug him. Although Issei always talks about their infinite lust, he doesn't lag far behind them. His horny, when activated, is practically immeasurable, and this can be seen by how some slight convulsions happened in Tiamat and Kim, who, when they wake up, it is practically impossible to get up, as they cannot feel their legs in place, and their whole body still remains immersed in pleasure. Issei was always underestimating himself, even without knowing his real limits. And Tiamat and Kim knew that if Issei breaks free and knows her true limits, they fear that not even they would be able to satisfy her husband. Issei's lust, when stoked, makes him a machine that only thinks about one thing, hex, and nothing else. And then you could tell when Tiamat or Kim told him to be less brute, although they are the ones who stir up Issei and tell him to go with everything. Giving up on the idea of getting up, Issei lay down again as his hands came into contact with the sleeping Tiamat and Kim's hair, and he stroked them carefully. After a while, Tiamat and Kim woke up and could see that his body was still immersed in pleasure. "He's becoming a machine every day," Tiamat said as she felt her body struggle to move. "It filled my uterus to the stump," she said, touching her intimacy that started spilling Issei's hymen. "We're going to get pregnant again if we keep this up," Kim said calmly as she placed her hand on her belly. "Although it's not a bad idea to have another baby. Now I want a boy," she said with a smile as her voice sounded cheerful. Both smiled and left the space created by Yamato, leaving Issei there, as they knew he wouldn't wake up for now because of the effect of the aphrodisiacs. So they went to take care of their daughters, but before that, they took a bath to get the sweat and stick out of the mixture of their fluids with Issei's hymen.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.